default on that, then they'll be coming to me to come and evict you.
Sorry, if my tenant defaults?
No, if you default.
If I default?
Yes, they'll be coming to me, and that's what happens, is that I then bring an application against you,
Oh, right, yeah.
and I enter everybody's tenancy and throw everybody out.
I'm not.
No, I'm just saying, you'd be shocked.
I get
You-
it. I'm basically their tenant.
You're
What you're
basically
saying.
their tenant, and
Yeah.
then you're putting your own subtenants in, who are then gonna be substantially impacted by your failure to maintain your things. It was, thankfully, it was one thing that was thought of in advance of all this kind of actions going on. And I do these kind of applications annually, actually, unfortunately, where people get in, maybe their tenants are screwing them around, not paying them the rent, they start to fall behind. It escalates, developer goes so far, if you haven't closed by the date they prescribed, and they send you lots of warnings, you gotta do it now, we want you off our back. And then if you don't, then they send you a letter telling you it's terminated, and it's going to Mr. Smith, and then you get a notice of hearing.
Oh, and then what if the tenant that which is the subtenant, doesn't leave, then am I in trouble? And the subtenant, is this because?
My order from the board is enforceable by the sheriff, they come and throw everybody in. But then your tenant's probably gonna sue you because you substantially interfered with them by your operational failure. And they'll be successful. And it can get ugly, in fact, actually, and the board does to some degree want us to actually put your occupant tenant on notice that this is going on, and the condo people require knowing who you have in your unit, so that we can actually do so. So when they come to us, I actually have all that information, so, yeah, they get an invite to your hearing too. Because the board has to consider the impact on the poor helpless occupant.
Right.
Of course, you know. Contract tenant.
Yeah.
Either now or after, just curious, I don't own any condos, but if I were to get in pre-construction, I probably wouldn't want to take possession. I think was there a change recently about capital gains tax that now you can't sell it or assign it before you take possession, and you could in the past avoid capital gains, but now you can't? Is that now a con that we should consider?
It might be on the next. Is it on the next slide? Uncertainty. No, I don't have it in here. Go back. Oh, sorry, go back. Good point. What he's talking about is assignments. So assignments, do I have to close on the unit, essentially? Closing on the unit means I need to come up with the rest of the money, mortgage, I have to pay some of this stuff, development charges, educational levies, hydro hookup fees, land transfer taxes. Short answer is no, but the more nuanced answer is the CRA is cracking down and looking for people who are assigning now. They are looking for, so they're trying to be more sophisticated than they have in the past. Because there was no registry for this before. They couldn't check the CRAs. Okay. So they're asking builders to like hand over original purchase agreements so they can match that up to see who's on title at close, right? So they're starting to look for that stuff. I mean, they're starting to try to implement some of this stuff. How far along they are? We get updates from head of Rain's accounting guru, and he keeps us up to date on this. So they are starting to look more at capital gains and trying to, and actually not just capital gains, they're looking for people who do this as a business, and if they do that as a business, it's not capital gains, it's active business income. 100%, not 50%, right? So yes, in certain situations, in more nuanced situations, you could be subject to some of this, but they're looking for intent. So if you're doing this and you're doing you've done it a bunch of times, then yeah, they're going to see a pattern. But if you could show that your intent all along was this was going to be my primary residence or whatever, or my intention was that this was going to be a rental property, not inventory. Right? Once they consider this as part of your inventory, they will consider this as your business and charge you 100%. If you could show that the intent all along was a rental property, then, and you can show that you don't really have a history of doing this or whatever, chances are that assignments will still be okay. But it's a very nuanced thing. I can't give you a straight answer. You have to talk to your accountant if you think that you're falling into that. But I did talk about really quickly fees. So there's a whole bunch of closing fees, other fees. Example. Okay, only buying a contract. We talked about that. Uncertainty because you don't know it's been built yet. More subject to the market. I mentioned that. Personal use. If you wanted to find somewhere to live, you're not living there anytime soon. Okay, keep on going. I have a really quick example. I don't want to get into these numbers because we're already running over time, and I'm not the man of the hour. This guy is. But I wanted to show one area that we really like right now is down by the water on the east side. Why? Alphabet. Google Smart City, 50,000 jobs. It's not a green light, go ahead, shovels hitting the ground, but they're in the negotiations. But the point is, even if that doesn't happen, something's happening there. We know something's happening there. The whole reason Google or Alphabet got in there with Sidewalk Labs was because they were one of many proposals that wanted to redevelop that waterfront area. So we're talking like, Quayside, Portland's. This is like Queens Quay and Parliament kind of areas. Right? So they're starting around here, but they want to expand further out. So we like that area. It's got Google Smart City and right about, okay, no, that's good. Go. Right here. East Harbor. So East Harbor, right now if you drive, this is at the corner of like the GDP and Gardner. This area, they're redeveloping into one of the largest commercial development areas in downtown. It's going to be like the size of the Oakdale Mall. They're developing that right there. This is huge. Another 50,000 jobs is what they're estimating for this area. So between development of this, the waterfront, development here, we see huge potential in this area. Also, if you followed transit, they're thinking about the downtown relief line, which is going to come kind of East York, Pape, Logan area, come south to Leslieville, and then come west to Queen Station. It's going right through, and that's going to be a transit hub. So lots of good stuff happening here. Go back one. Back. So what we're seeing in this area, we want to be aiming for 1,000 to 1,100 per square foot. There are certain projects that don't make sense. They're like $1,300 to $1,500 a square foot. What we're seeing is about 1,000 to 1,100 square foot, and that's what we're targeting. And we've mentioned this before. If possible, if it's available to you in terms of your capital and everything else, we recommend 2 bedrooms if you can make that happen. If not, 1+1s are a backup option where the den can be turned into another bedroom. And if not, then you default to a 1 bedroom. But we try to start off with the best asset, and then go from there. I've talked ad nauseum about why 2 bedrooms, so I'm not going to get into that today. Okay.
Sorry, but at that price point, say 20% down, any of those cash flowing even close? Is that why you're suggesting a 2-bedroom?
I've got numbers for this. Okay, so pretty picture. Okay. So I'm going to fly through this. This is not the meat and potatoes of today, but basically, if we got a 2-bedroom, roughly 735 square feet, 760,000 deposit structure. So basically, 15% in a year, let's say, something like that. We're talking about 114,000 within the first year. They say buildings complete in 2022. I'm like, bullshit. 2023, 2024, maybe. Closing costs, so you're gonna have some fees, lawyers, everything, land transfer. What I like about this is that your capital can go further. It can be extended over a period of time. This isn't 20%. This isn't all your capital right off the bat. So for those of you who, this can be a very strategic approach. It means that I can come up with some capital now and then some capital later. And then we actually have certain builders, brand name builders, who will do like 5% now and then like $1,000 a month for until you hit another 5%. So like just ways to make your capital go further. And for those people who are like, oh my God, well I don't have 100,000 right now. Okay, well maybe you have 50 right now, and maybe we can work with that. Or maybe you have 40 right now, maybe we can work with that. Right? So we like that builder for certain people who that situation works for.
You can see that the price for this piece of paper is actually higher than price for real units today on this slide.
Yes. So we see. So for example, 1,000 a square foot is what we have mostly right now. We have in resale in equivalent type areas, equivalent like hot areas, about 900 a square foot, but 900 to 1,000. The difference is 5 to 10%. Versus resale, but there's a problem with resale. Well, I don't have that case study here. A couple of things. The building's been built already, maybe 5, 10 years old. Maintenance fees are higher, and your cash flow negative out of the gate. So there's a couple of things that, but yeah, you are right.
What I'm trying to say is probably general rule now. Like piece of papers are now more expensive than similar real units.
Yep. No, I would agree. I would agree. That's because of the intrinsic value that that piece of paper can provide over something that's cash flow negative, let's say, or has really high maintenance fees in it. Okay, keep going. So basically, current rent for something like that would be, $26.50. So this is the trend that we're seeing. In a previous presentation, we talked about rents increase year over year. What was that? From last year to this year?
15.2. I got it from my
Had an effort. We've seen a couple of different reports, double digits. We've seen 10, 12, something in that range. We don't need 10%, 15% growth in rents. We need 4. 4% would get us to where we need to go. I know that the guidelines are 1.8, but upon tenant turnover, assuming that Bill 1.4 doesn't go through.
If you have an agreement in place, can you do the 4% rent increase?
Sorry?
If you have a rental agreement in place,
No.
you have to stick to what the area.
Upon tenant turnover, we have that ability right now. So Steven's going to get into that in a little bit. Anyway, the point is that not massive amounts of cash flow, but this would be a cash flow negative property out of the gate right now. This would be cash flow. I've done the math. I sent it to Tim. What was it? Maybe $400, something like that. A resale condo right now of this caliber would be cash flow negative about $400 right out of the gate. Something like that. Anyway, the point here is your total capital invested was this, and according to a 5% growth, even after you sell it with a realtor or whatever, even after equity growth. So this was my point right in the beginning. Now you actually have a larger sum of money that actually can go towards a larger down payment and mitigates this whole like I can't get a mortgage or I can't get a mortgage of my max amount anymore. So equity growth is sort of the linchpin to the strategy. Cool. Okay, so keep on. So I think the point is, in previous presentations I've talked about this a lot. A $1.2 million property would be 20% down payment is $240,000. So 1.2 million is a $240,000 down payment with a $45,000 in closing costs. So roughly you need about $285,000. So what was that number, 3 something? The point is that you could potentially be taking a smaller amount of equity or a smaller amount of down payment, turning it into something that's enough to buy something like this. And this is what we've always talked about, a $1.2 million triplex that is cash flow positive.
Want to be more by then?
Yeah, it'll be, I mean, that's sort of the other thing. So we need equity growth. So if you want to take a kind of the interstitial step is you might need to do it a couple of times. So it may not be a given, but you might need, maybe you take that equity, go get another one, and then you have two properties that are doing this for you. Eventually you get to a point where you have enough equity for a kind of gold standard asset. This is a framework. Okay. A couple other things. So you're talking about assignment for occupancy. That was one of your alternative strategies. This strategy was close and then sell. But you could sell before you close. You could close and hold for cash flow, building equity. You can close, hold, and refi. We talked about that, right? Pull out the equity. The value of the condo is higher. The original mortgage was on the original purchase price. The difference, you could do an equity takeout and then go buy another one. So this is sort of that could be step 1A and then 1B before you just jump to the next step. Okay, so now sorry, I'm 10 minutes late, but now we'll get to the real reason over here. So why learn about tenant laws? Go. You need to protect yourself. I had some very preliminary conversations with some people in the audience, and what we were talking about is in certain areas, especially when you start venturing outside the GTA, your tenant profile can be compromised. What we do in order to mitigate that risk is we identify our tenant first and we build our business model around them. Personally, I've been through very stressful, tough times with dealing with tenants. The tenants are the biggest risk to your business. It's not the market, it's not interest rates, and it's not whatever it is you think it is. What it is tenants. So you need to do everything you can to mitigate your tenant risk. How we mitigate our tenant risk is we try to focus our business model here in Toronto. I know some of you guys are investing in other places. And the point still stands. You're looking for the best possible tenant profile. You're looking for, like, generally speaking, that tenant profile for us ends up being young professionals, millennials, educated, university educated, a couple years out of school, making $60,000 to $70,000 a year, working for a large firm in downtown Toronto. That's our bread and butter. I get those guys all day long in the areas that we buy and the type of properties, type of product that we offer. Right? So just make sure you know that in the area that you're buying. Don't buy property first and then go find your tenants. I mean, you will from a chronological order, but when you're doing your due diligence and you're evaluating and deciding which city or which market, which neighborhood, find your tenant first and then build your business model around them. So that's how we've been able to mitigate that risk. So we can't eliminate tenant risk. We can't eliminate it. And that exposure we still have to the tenant risk can be shored up by having someone on your side. Someone who knows what the hell they're doing and someone who you can just say, okay, I can't deal with this anymore, you deal with it. So there's some stuff that's coming down the pipe, or has already come down the pipe. There's a new standardized lease, and Stephen Smith is here to talk about the new standardized lease and what we can do to mitigate our risk. What we can do to manipulate this into our favor. You don't have to just take it and use it as is. You can actually it's malleable. And he'll show you how. New tenant laws. So know how to navigate these new tenant laws and mitigate the risk to your business. Best practices. So Stephen Smith is an expert, and a bunch of our clients have been very pleased with Stephen's services in helping them deal with very, very difficult situations. Really, I mean, I call it a Rolodex. It's not a Rolodex. I have one phone number you call, and it just deals with it for you. But the point here is that we operate at the highest, like we don't want to operate down here, right? We want to operate at the highest possible, most sophisticated level possible. We don't want stupid politicians making these stupid rules to dictate the success or failure of our business. If you do, then you're just like everyone else, and you'll bitch and complain, you go, oh my God. But the reality is, have a good team on your side, know what the hell you're doing, mitigate the investor risk, which is you, and your knowledge and your expertise, by building a good team around you. An essential part of that team is Stephen Smith. So, why don't you come up here? Everyone welcome Stephen Smith. So, let's have your question.
Sure.
I've got one quick question.
Yeah, before you start.
You said something about provided a certain tenant bill does not go through, or rental tenant bill does not go through.
Oh, he'll get to that.
Okay. Nobody's talking about that.
I didn't hear the question, sorry.
I was saying something about providing a certain bill does not go through.
Yeah, it's Bill 144. It's a frightening bit of legislation that was sent in, while I was in a hearing, and I actually exclaimed out loud, oh my God. The member said, Mr. Smith, are you okay? I said, no, I think I'm going to be sick, and I'm going to leave the room now while I do so. It was a draconian device created by the Wynne government as another desperate attempt to stay in power. It would have basically imposed upon you, if you've made the mistake of giving your tenants below market value rent, it would have stuffed you with it for the rest of your life, because we wouldn't have been able to fix that anymore. It would have imposed upon you an absolute requirement to go get a tattoo on your butt and tell the board all about your tenancy so that they could keep track of you. And it would have imposed upon you the guideline, no matter what. Vacant possession, guideline. That's the max you could have increased it. It was a nightmare. I've been tracking it since it first hit the legislation. It cleared the first hurdle, the first reading, and then thankfully stalled, and I haven't seen it budge since then. So for the time being, we're all safe. Had the NDP gotten in, you would all be having nightmares, because her promise was to actually immediately pass it. So be thankful we didn't. That's stupid. I think we had enough off of the window.
So I'm just going to elaborate on this a little more. So more specifically, if you have a tenant in place, your question was, can you increase rent beyond the guidelines? Yeah, you can in certain instances. Rent was an crap. For all intents and purposes, let's say no. It's just the guideline, for all intents and purposes. Upon tenant turnover, you can charge whatever the market will bear. Right? It means I can get whatever I can get. What Stephen suggests, what Stephen's referring to, is Bill 144 being proposed, or was proposed, was even upon tenant turnover, I cannot raise my rent beyond the rental guidelines. Yeah,
it was crazy. Like I said, I wasn't kidding when I exclaimed out loud in the middle of a hearing, oh my God. Because I said, I'm a stakeholder. I get things like this sent to me in advance, well in advance, so we know what the hell we're dealing with when we show up at the board ready to play. So thankfully it hasn't happened, so we can all relax for the time being. But what did happen was an awful lot of manipulation of this law over the last 2 years, and it's had dramatic impact on you. And you know, I've been an educational style firm from the very beginning. I firmly believe that if I educate you on how not to hurt yourself, then you're not going to create a mess that I can't fix. And I kind of like that, because I like to win and I hate to lose. So how many of you are still attached to the philosophy of a fixed term tenancy? Fixed term, meaning like a 1-year term.
I still use it.
Okay, guess what?
I know you're not supposed
You're all wrong. And I'll tell you why. Because the liberal gift in October 2016 began the process of taking away the meaning of a fixed term. In 2016, they introduced the tenant 27-day notice, woe is me, I'm somehow suffering abuse, and now I'm going to walk away from your tenancy regardless of where I am in the term, and too bad, so sad, you're not going to get to ask me any questions, and there's not a goddamn thing you can do to stop me. Bye. So that was the beginning of the end to the meaning of fixed term. Then it got worse. historically what we would call a lease breaking party, where a tenant engages in some deliberate action, giving rise to you taking them to the board to terminate their tenancy, we could hunt them down and go after them for the balance of your fixed term. That was common law. And lease breaking parties were historically prohibited. No, not anymore. Thank you again to the Liberal government. So at the beginning of 2017, a law firm out of London went in front of a judge in Kitchener who's absolutely in love with himself, and he posts every single one of his decisions to the Canley that we report all this case law to. They went on a vacancy loss case. He dismissed it. They appealed it. The divisional court upheld his decision. So when I first saw that decision, because I read case law every single day, throughout the day, always, I knew this spelled bad news for us, because what it was really was the reviving of lease breaking parties, because this now says that no, you can't go after that vacancy loss. That if you brought the tenant, if you gave the tenant a notice to terminate their tenancy, you terminated the contract. And therefore you have no right, fundamental right in law, to go after the balance of it. Insanity. So the Liberal government caught wind of this and they jumped on the bandwagon. And in the last round of amendments that took place in September, they actually now specifically spell it out that you are prohibited from pursuing any tenant for any portion of a fixed term tenancy at all. So stop doing this to yourselves, because the only thing you're doing to yourself with a fixed term tenancy is repressing your rights. If that tenant's paying their rent late all the time, I can't help you until we get near that date. Heaven help you if you did a multi-year fixed term or stupid renewal clauses. Don't think these things. Not at all. Don't want to see them ever in your lease agreements. Tenants will use it against you every single time. I've got one right now where the property was being run by a property management company. Landlord says, you know what, it's time for me to sell, I don't want to renew. Property management company ignored that instruction, sent a renewal to the tenant, signed as his agent. Tenant hasn't signed it. Now landlord wants to sell it. And I have sat in hearings where they've executed it right there and then out of hearing to screw your notice. So stay away from renewal clauses, stay away from fixed terms. The reality in Ontario is once you create a tenancy, it is in effect forever unless you meet the criteria of the Act. That's what Section 37 means. You can only terminate your tenancy in accordance with me, the law. Must use my forms? No exception. Must meet my criteria? No exception. So the tenant's got all the security and tenant they need. Don't help them. You need something. Month to month. Word go. They don't like it, bye. There's your reason. Bye. That's how this tenancy operates. This is my boat. I drive my boat, not you. Okay? Same thing with discussing rent. This is the rent. This is the color of the walls. This is the tenancy. Don't like it? Bye. Simple. Don't let these tenants pressurize you into reducing your rent, bringing it down below market value, making them employees. Lots of people make this mistake. If you don't wish to do certain things at your property and you feel the need to have a tenant take over these tasks, the correct way to do it is not reduce your rent. It's to say tenant, and then spell it out in your tenancy agreement, in fact. For every month you do these duties, I will give you a credit. And as long as you do them and you do them well, you get the credit. Stop doing them, stop getting the credit. This way you haven't affected your rent, because what the tenant will do is they'll go 13 months on that reduced rent. And then they'll turn around and say, screw you, I'm not doing it anymore. And then there's nothing you can do about it, because now my rent is down and you can't claw it back up. So these are the games, some of the games that they play with you. And that's why I want you to get over the fixed term notion, because the last kick at the can from the Wynne government did kind of hurt you. This lease contraption that they came up with, they did not consult any of my community. This is their manipulation to craft a tenant-friendly, hugging document full of a lot of nonsense. It is pathetic. So, but they at least left you a back door. The back door is it says you can attach a Schedule A with additional terms. What that means is that you can go to somebody like me, or one of my colleagues, where you can buy a product, that is based on many, many years' experience, based on our extreme understanding of the legislation, and a product that can be put into effect with their document. You make their document Part 1, our document Schedule A. The other thing you were obligated to do, most of you don't even know it, is that since 2007, you were obligated to give out what I refer to as the propaganda document. Section 11, things I need to tell my tenant. This is where you get to go to get all your rights. These are all your rights. This is how to contact those nasty people down there at the landlord and tenant board. By the way, pay your rights. Don't change the locks because we'll take issue with that, with you. And that's what you have to give it out. You'd be shocked. It's something that comes up. Same thing with another thing that we're seeing in litigation coming up is not telling the tenant about the utility costs. They have documents on their website. All you have to do is go to their website and go to landlord forms and scroll down. You'll find these documents. We're seeing these claims coming up where they're saying you did not tell us how high their utilities were going to be, and now we want to try and sue you for the difference. Mixed results depends on the adjudicator you get. So there's something you want to pay attention to in terms of giving them the propaganda material. I make my tenants sign off. Not only did I get a copy of my lease, I got a copy of my propaganda material. And there's a new 2018 version out there that you can get from the board as well, so, or I can email it to you as part of my overall package. But these are some of the things that you need to start doing in terms of just your setup of your tenancy. I agree wholeheartedly what is Matthew saying about you have to screen the crap out of your tenants. My baseline is I believe nothing out of their mouth, and I make them prove everything, and I double prove it. That's baseline, because the reality is they're all lying. The 2002 introduction of the privacy legislation into this area of practice gave tenants a cloak of secrecy, and it enabled predator tenants to explode in population numbers to frighten anybody. And these predators are very skilled. They are taking over not only just one unit at a time, they're quite often taking over multiple units at a time. And hotel and Airbnb, and they're making money off of you. And that's a shocking, alarming amount of times that's being done. I just actually ended one last month where their whole business, it's actually a business. They never ever occupied the unit. They've Airbnb'd it out from day one. So you've got to be mindful about who you're dealing with. Check every piece of information they give you. Double check it yourself. If they say I work for company X, Google company X. Does an A exist? Is that the phone number that's on my rental application? If there's discrepancies, start doubting. Call them. Make sure, look up the number yourself, 411. Can I have the number for this company? Call their human resources department. Does this person actually work there? Because we're seeing a lot of falsification of documents like employment letters. Jennifer Smith, one of the biggest predators that I took down several times, this woman is very skilled at it. So the last one I took her down on, she burned my client for $35,000 in damages and losses.
It's not your daughter, right?
No, she's actually a giant fat black woman and I'm a skinny white guy, so no relation at all. and definitely no love between us, I can assure you. And she used to be a paralegal before we got rid of the dirt like that. But she, her last, the rental agent that put her in, accepted on its face value a letter of employment claiming that she worked for the Ministry of Housing, making more money than the Premier of Ontario. She had a falsified credit report. Never, ever accept a tenant credit report. Do your own. Become a member of RentCheck. Do your own. Get the real information from the source, because they are members of Equifax. And they falsify them all the time. And it also said that she worked for the Ministry of Housing, making more money than the Premier of Ontario. I don't know how stupid that particular rental agent was to have accepted that information on its face. But it caused my client severe harm, and we then sued him for it. Because I brought case law in here that says, rental agent, if you screw up and you didn't do due diligence, we're going to go to Mr. Smith, he's going to take you to court, and you're going to be found that you're 100% liable to me for the losses that I've suffered, the damage, my rent, all of it, and his bill. So you want to make sure you pay some real attention to that. Believe nothing is the baseline. We don't live in the It's a Wonderful Life dream. We never did. It's never coming. Okay, so you have to get past that part of it. When you want to be nice to somebody, be nice to yourself. Start there first. Keep nice out of your business. Keep business in business. Tenant, I agree to give you a unit meets minimum standard. You agree to pay me my rent on time and in full. You agree not to wreck my place. You agree not to be a nuisance. And beyond that, I don't want to know anything about your miserable life. I don't want you to know anything about mine. Plain and simple. All right? That's your relationship. When you start feeding them details about your life, they will look for ways to extort it. I had a tenant in Newmarket that found out my client was in a DUI accident, which obviously insurance was not going to cover. She was heading rapidly towards bankruptcy. What do you think that tenant started doing? Stop paying the rent. Stop paying the utilities. Start screwing with the landlord big time. They drove her to a point of almost having a nervous breakdown. Thankfully, her friend was able to get the property sold at a high rate of speed and get her out of the trouble that she was in, get her away from this tenant. But if you feed them information, they're going to use it, and then I'm going to have to fight harder to take it away from them. So don't be arming your tenants with this kind of stuff. So keep those things in mind in terms of the standardized lease. Read it carefully. Be careful in your crafting. It was 12 days old and I was getting calls from people saying, oh my God, I screwed up and I've entered into this agreement. This is what I've done. Okay, read it carefully. Be precision in the way you craft it. Buy a quality product from somebody, not self-help press. That's not a quality product because people don't know anything about rental in Ontario. Don't know anything about residential tenancy law in Ontario. Don't go with stuff like that. Go with people who are actual practitioners who are crafting these products for a reason. So those are the main things that you need to understand just about the lease process itself. The next thing that I want to suggest to you as well is this whole business about own use. The change that came into effect last year where we now have to bribe the tenant out of the unit for you to have the right to occupy your own premise. The board is being very, very punitive against you if you haven't perfected that part of the process with the compensation prior to the termination date. And right now, because of the problems we're having with the board and the scheduling issues, sometimes your hearing is going to happen after that termination date. So you better have some demonstration that you gave it to the tenant either by email transfer, something that's traceable, bank draft that's traceable, some mechanism to show that you did this prior to that termination date. In a worst case scenario that I had happen here earlier this year, I wasn't on record, I only was asked after the fact. Client self-represents, he goes to the board, tenant's mother comes, has a cat fight with them. After a long, drawn-out, prolonged hearing, the member finally says, okay, I'm satisfied, landlord, you want to occupy your house with your new wife. The member is painfully slow in the issuing of his orders. Landlord panicked, and he put a stop payment on the check. Then he woke up and he realized, shit, I shouldn't have done that. Reissued the check. Tenant's mother shows up, files a request for review, says this is a demonstration of bad faith. And the board member agreed with him. And as a result of that, he's now lost his right for me to put him in there for his own use. Because we have a principle in law, res judicata. Once it's been heard, it can never be heard again. That's self-inflicted gunshot wound at its finest. So don't play games with the system. And go to somebody. We're up to something like about 13,000 and change licensed paralegals in Ontario. I currently am a mentor in a number of different groups on Facebook and other sites. Just because there's 13,000 of us doesn't mean there's 13,000 good ones of us. There's probably in the entire province 20 of us at my level of expertise and knowledge of this area of law. There are an awful lot of grossly incompetent paralegals coming out of school who don't have a clue. And some of the questions I see on these sites, they say I'm brutal. I'm sorry, but when you ask a question, what's the termination period on an N12 notice, and then I write a response, are you capable of reading? It's on page 1. If they're that stupid, you don't want to be near them. You want to find competent representation. There are firms like myself, we've been living this law every single day for 20 or more years. You want to go with the people who are known entities in the system because we are going to some degree, be treated differently by the adjudicators. They're given profiles about us. They know that we're going to be efficient in our presentation and the way we approach our cases. They know our notices are going to be perfected, no defects, free of flaws. And they know that we're gonna help the system expedite. So we're treated slightly differently. So that's something you wanna keep in your minds when you do find yourself in trouble. Earlier, before we got started, we were talking about that nasty place, the Human Rights Tribunal. Okay, this is not a place you ever want to find yourself at. Because if you're either responding on a matter there, the answer is bring your checkbook. Because they're even worse than the landlord and tenant board. They litigate from the bench. They have these free clinics for the applicants that will jump on board and bury you under their approach to the degree of where you'll end up paying money. There is a self-represented landlord who I see at the board weekly. She doesn't pay for any of us. She's been doing it a long time. For the most part, she can handle the board. She got asked to go to the Human Rights Tribunal because she allegedly discriminated against a tenant who was under 18. Her side of the story, it's not what happened. Unfortunately for her, she went to the Human Rights Tribunal, self-represented. 3 clinics got involved. And the next thing you know, she owes that tenant $10,000, and her name is mush because they just smeared her. And unlike the landlord and tenant board orders that get posted on Family, where all names are redacted, the Human Rights Tribunal wants to tell the world what an evil person you are, and do so in graphic nature. So you want to make sure if you're disqualifying a tenant, you don't have to give them an answer as to why. We've accepted somebody else. Sorry, you didn't qualify. We've accepted somebody else. It's the simplest answer. And just go with that. You're not obligated to tell them any answer, and don't. Okay, that's the safest way to be. But run them through very rigorous screening. Become a member of Rent Check. John, who is the owner of Rent Check, was a victimized landlord. That's why he formed the firm. He is constantly looking for ways to help you with screening programs and stuff like that. With the Toronto Star victory that happened just a little while ago, he will be able to go back to his data purchasing approach where he buys data from the board, and we can again start building these databases up to begin being able to offer you a service of here's your tenant's profile from the board. So that'll be helpful. That was a great victory on the part of the Toronto Star. I was aware of it from the beginning. Their approach was right. They took the approach that was unconstitutional, and they won. And so hopefully within a year, they have 1 year to clean this mess up and give us our access back, and then hopefully we'll be able to start getting you back the tools to properly screening them that way.
What was the database you called it? CMAR or?
Well, it's okay. Seymour is the board's operating system. But the board likes to spend money on stupid things like, oh, let's change the name at a huge expense. And let's change the operating system. So we used to have an operating system called Caseload. Worked fine for years. In fact, that's actually when I first started buying data, that's where I was buying it from the Caseload system. Then they spent $8 million building Seymour, a network that links all the boards, all locations together through this network, and we can access the data. They at the time told us, we can't give you the data anymore because Seymour doesn't support that, even though it supports printing mailing labels. And we used to get this information in the form of an Excel spreadsheet. So I argued that for another client and was successful in getting it back for him. They are about to change Seymour out again, 2019. They're working on it right this second. But they were going to come out and say the same answer they did the last time. Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't build that process into the system. We deliberately didn't build it into the system. But the Toronto Star victory will likely head that off, and they'll have to be able to make this data available. It's expensive. It's not something I'm encouraging you, the end user, to buy, because it is expensive. But people like myself, or firms that have skin in the game, Rent Check, that sort of thing, we want to track tenants. You know, I track all tenants that I encounter, that I deal with. I basically take a visual image of them. Many of them have more names than I can count, so I don't care what their name is. I take a visual image, I build around it their antics. Somebody's going to say those antics to me again, and my mind's going to go ding. I probably have that one in my system. And then we're going to start looking. Oh, there you are. I've evicted you 2, 3, 4 times. I know exactly how to play you now. See how to hear it. So it's not, Seymour's not really going to, you know, the operating system of the board's not going to be of any use to you, and it's, like I said, it is cost prohibitive. Plus also the deal I brokered for the last guy said he was supposed to have exclusive use, but I know that they've already brokered that other deal. So, you know, for that kind of money that you pay. But there's lots of things that they like, you need to think of this as a business. from start to finish, the way you operate it is of uber importance to you. Price your rents accordingly so that you are making money. Market value of Toronto, I don't care that all the tenants in the city of Toronto are crying, woe is me, Toronto's too expensive to live in. That's not my problem, it's not your problem. Toronto is what it is, same with Vancouver. Vancouver is what it is. If this is what the market will bear, then that's what the market will bear. If the market crashes and it changes things up, so be it. But until it does, I don't care. Wynn government caused irreparable harm in this province. There will never be another apartment building built in Ontario ever again in any of our lives or our children's lives, because they took away the Section 6 exemption. And the whole point of the Section 6 exemption was to allow a developer to build a building and ascertain the actual market value of that building, like you've been talking about for the last half hour, and then adjust the rent accordingly. They all claim, all little tenant huggers claim that we abused it. I get served out many N2 notices in the course of my career. And I can honestly say not once did I ever abuse it. I used it exactly as the mechanism was intended. The client now has a better understanding of the market value is on that unit, and we're adjusting it. Plain and simple. If you can't afford a tenant, the whole reason it's a 90-day notice is to facilitate you having a 60-day period to give us notice to say bye. So they took it away from you.
So what happened with these apartment buildings?
Well, I have one client in particular. He's a very, very significant developer. He, at the time, just before they did that, was building 4 towers, 300 units per each tower. And he said, if they touch that, I will immediately convert. He converted all of them. It was in the paper. They were crying the blues about what a meanie he is. He's actually a really nice guy, a really smart guy. But he immediately converted all those units to condo. And he'll never build another apartment again. He doesn't want to be a landlord. He was willing to be, but he doesn't want to be. So, they cause a lot of harm. It's just that's what I've seen all along. We don't know what Ford's going to do, because every government that comes in sticks their own stick in the pot and stirs it up and does whatever they're going to do. They stick their own buddies in. The other problem that you're facing right now is length of time to get your hearing. This election had bad timing. It put a hiring freeze on at a time when we were already short adjudicators. And it's causing elongated times to get to a hearing. So right now for our standard combined application, L1, L2, I just filed one today. The earliest date I could get is August 17th. To you, the landlord who's suffering hemorrhaging on arrears, you're not happy about that because your arrears are going to double by the time I get you there. So that's something that has to play out in your minds as well. If you want a job, it's a lot of work, but your entry level is 101. Caps out at 118 for a standard member, and if you become a vice chair, go up to 135 to 145. If you want a job, and you want a lot of stress. But right now we're short 5 at Toronto South, the St. Clair office. We're short 3 adjudicators in Scarborough. We're short 2 in Mississauga, 3 in Hamilton, and they're trying to share them around. We don't have the bodies to hear the cases. It's as simple as that.
If they were living in your dwelling at the time you filed, and then between now and when the actual hearing is, they have moved out, is it true that you have to go to small claims court or something other than the...
No, as long as you perfected the process that they were in possession at the time the board served them with your application and notice of hearing, you're good to go. Go get your judgment.
Okay.
Don't withdraw just because they moved. You can go and say, yes, they moved on this date, the board's going to do an adjustment on what you're owed. But no, don't start a second process. It's only if they flee before you file.
You're saying that the best way to do a lease is to go month to month.
Always.
And it just makes it easier to say bye-bye. Can you just walk me through, what is the actual steps of that process? How does that go?
That's how you structure the lease right from the word go. Even on the board standardized form, it's asking you, what am I? Am I a month to month or am I on a fixed term? The answer is always going to be month to month. Even on my form, I actually, as of 2016, took out your option to make it anything other than a month to month. And I didn't want you harming yourself anymore, so I deleted that portion altogether.
So how much notice do you have to give them? Just 30 days?
60 days.
60 days.
Depends on what you're giving them notice for. Like I said earlier, this act requires you meet the criteria in order to terminate a tenancy. So for you, the landlord, it's got to be very specific. If it's terminating for you or your immediate family member, child, parent, caregiver, medical caregiver, I'll be any of those, spouse, then 60 days notice. But if it's for a cause, willful damage, disturbance, illegal act, impairment of safety, persistent late payment. Persistent late payment's a 60-day notice. The other ones are not. So it's got a prescribed, each type of notice has a prescribed termination date on it. That's another reason why I don't want you doing, you know, terms, because persistent late is an end of term notice. End of term, if it's a month means it just has to be the last day of a rental period.
So renting out a condo, can the condo board dictate whether it's a one-year lease? Can they actually do that, or can you?
Condos have this philosophy that they are somehow above the law. Let me tell you what the Residential Tenancy Act says about that. The law, supersede every other law with one exception, the Human Rights Tribunal, the Human Rights Code. So I am the king, and everybody else is subservient to me. So condo law is not superior to residential tenancy law, and what they do, because the Residential Tenancy Act has a section in it that says anything in your lease agreement that's contrary to me, the law, is automatically void by virtue of that fact alone. That's pretty much what it says.
Sorry, say that again. Say that.
The Residential Tenancy Act has a section in it that says anything in your lease agreement that's contrary to me, the law, is automatically void by virtue of that fact alone. And what happens is when I was fighting with the Privacy Commission 2002 to 2004 to get my right to the data back, I started wondering, how are they finding you and why? There's got to be like, you're not walking around with signs on yourselves, I hope, or how are you finding you? I spotted two primary targeting devices that they were using on you. First, your own genuine desire to want to be nice and have people like you. You might as well put a big neon sign on your phone that says, I like to be victimized, come here. Because they are going to come and they're going to prey upon you. Oh, woe is me, you know, I'm so hard done by, you're such a nice person, and you feel soft for them and you're going to buy their crap. And then the bullshit's going to start day one, after the honeymoon's over. That's why in my leasing package, my rental application, in 2006 when I got my advanced copy of the Residential Tenancy Act, I sat down and spent my Christmas break instead of having a holiday, rewriting everything. And I came up with an idea that I wrote into my rental application, and I tell you in my instructions, what I've said here is not enforceable in law, it was never intended to be. Its sole purpose is to poke the bear. So the tenant just cannot wait to tell you it's wrong. And they do. And it protects you. Because now you see the honeymoon's over at your calling rather than their calling. Because when they see the statement there, they say, you can't do that because it's against the law. The shine's gone. That's okay, tenant. I'm just accepting the application today. We're going to get back to the person we've approved. Now you know. Now you know what bullet you just narrowly missed. And you know you're never calling that guy back. Because that's where you need to stop it before you make them a tenant. And people, I get thank you cards annually for people saying thank you. That works so well. Really, I love that idea that you just screwed the tenant over with tricks. And tenants say in hearings that he trapped me. Well, that's sometimes what I have to do to actually get rid of you.
Can you just repeat your statement of what you just said?
It's in my rental application in my package. It's a trigger that I use to provoke them into them making those statements to you. It was something that I crafted it myself. I was working on everything and revitalizing the application, and I thought, if they trick you, why can't I trick them too? Well, I can play. I like to play. I don't get to wear costumes the same as they do, but I can still have fun. So I did it, and it worked right like a charm right from word go. So it's still there. It's not coming out. Okay, and when it comes to sometimes, let's say you've made a mistake, you've let a monster in. Then there are going to be times where I'm going to have to play from behind the scenes and script your responses so that we can build that evidence. So one case in point, I had a client that was referred to me by a good colleague, Terry Klein, who's now mostly retired. And these people had started a tenancy with a tenant allegedly coming from Quebec. And she had good credit rating. She even allegedly owns a house in Burlington. So she looked good on paper. And she says, okay, yeah, well, my daughter's going to come first with her baby. And then I got some things I got to tie up here in Quebec, and then I'm going to come afterwards. And that's where the game was afoot, because what this really was to put this deadbeat no credit rating, loser of a daughter into the unit and screw the landlord. And they realized they made a mistake. So that's when I got involved, and we started scripting the responses to emails back. And I provoked that tenant to the point where she wrote to my client, I'm telling you that I'm transferring this tenancy to my daughter today. And then she got a notice of hearing from me the very next day, because I took that and it became evidence to show that she's just done an unauthorized transfer of that tenancy, and now we're evicting everybody. That's exactly what I did to them. So I did trap them. She did say that on the record. He trapped me, he trapped me. Yes, I'm very good at that sort of thing.
So, question about credit history report. Through some systems like TVS, tenant verification service, I think so, landlords can attach complaints if something happens, right? So all your web tenants that you meet on LTV, they should have complaints in credit history report, and it should be visible for.
But again, that's not going to happen until the higher court gave the Privacy Commission and the board a year to make that information accessible again to companies like myself and RentCheck. And so it's going to take time before that, and then it's going to take us time to purchase that data and rebuild the databases up so that we can give you those kinds of reports.
We don't need that data. Like there is service TVS, tenant verification service.
I've heard of these companies. Listen, not all of these companies can actually deliver on the product that they're claiming they can, because they don't have access, and I know they don't have access because I'm the guy that fought the fight back in 2002. So I know when I got it back, and I didn't broadcast to the world that I had gotten it back, because frankly I fought like a dog to get it back, and I think it was any of their business. So I didn't tell anybody. And in 2008, Harry Fine says to me, Stephen, do you have the data back? Yes. Why didn't you say something? Because I'm the one who fought for it. Why would I tell you all? Well, I've had private, quiet enjoyment of it for the last couple of years. What the hell? So, so I don't necessarily buy that these guys have the access to the data that they're saying. They may be doing due diligence, and I certainly hope so. And if they don't, they come to me and we'll sue them for your money back.
The whole idea is to attach complaint, like it's their internal complaint to create
Right.
to see number. So I wonder if tenants can.
But you have to be careful right now as well, because see, right now tenants enjoy the privacy. You can't identify the decision that I won in 2004. It specifically dwelled on the issue of tenant name and unit number. And there's been 2 divisional court decisions on the topic of taking photos in a tenant's rental unit. One by a colleague says absolutely, taking pictures of the rental unit. The other one says because the second colleague caved into the belief that there was an order on this topic from the French student. There's not. And I have it. I've seen it. What there was an opinion by a privacy commissioner that this somehow could lead to identification of the tenant.
I think it was an issue of photographs in the unit.
Well, that's what I'm about to say. So if you're taking photos of a rental unit that's tenanted, as long as your photos aren't identifying a person, like their kids on the wall or their family photos or whatever, if it's just photographs of their junk, then I don't believe there's any way to tell from a photograph of a pile of dirty dishes or laundry on the floor or garbage on the floor who that person is. And I would say that I have not, in fact, breached their privacy. And my notice of entry tells them, tenant, I'm coming on this day and this time, and yes, we may take photos. So I've already told them that, and my notice of entry has been a recognized document since 1998, because I actually took the time to build a certificate of service right into it, so it self-perfects.
I have a question. The standard form has a glaring statement that says that the tenant can move in another person into the unit.
Here's the reality, that's always been the case.
But they don't have to identify themselves? They don't have...
I don't, this is again why this document was poorly crafted.
Yeah.
So once you, as a landlord, enter into a lease, you have more or less unsubscribed your rights to that unit. The tenant can have anybody they want living with them, as long as they don't exceed the minimum standards set by the municipality, and that translates into 100 square feet per person, excluding kitchens, hallways, and bathrooms. So you have an 800 square foot unit, let's take 100 away just for the sake of argument. That means they could, in theory, have 7 people in there. And those kinds of cases are so difficult to prove because the kind of evidence you really need is an order from the bylaw officer, and they're not there on your side.
No way.
They're there for the tenant, so you're the one who's gonna get the fine. So don't ever call those guys. Don't call 3-1 and say, hey, bylaw,
Send me an
come on up to my
inspector.
rental unit and have a look, because, well, that just doesn't work for you, okay? And then you're like, Mr. Smith, now I need you to go to a provincial offenses court with me as well as the board. Yeah, no, and don't call them. They're not here, there for you. In fact, if you do get in trouble, if I have a proceeding in play to terminate a tenancy, I can generally put them all at bay. Say, I've already taken steps, this tenant's getting evicted, your authority's gonna come there, and the very second I terminate this tenancy, so cool your jets, back off. I've had to do that for a whole bunch of people lately. I had a 91-year-old woman, she had this holy 10-page list of failings. I called them all. Okay, I'm evicting the tenants, here's my hearing date, here's my file number, everybody settle down, we don't need to go finding 91-year-old women. She was just let some idiots into her basement. She didn't know she wasn't doing it right. Back off, we'll cure the problem. And I evicted them expeditiously. So, yes, sir.
How much can tenants gain the hearings by just not showing up or claiming?
Unfortunately, that's a game. It's a game that I have to go to one on next Tuesday where that's the game that's being played.
So you go, but the tenant may not be there. You have
So
to
again, another manipulation by the Liberal government is them, when you file your application, they serve the tenant. I like it better when I serve the tenant because I have every reason to do so. A paper shuffling clerk has no reason to do so. So there's no real way to perfect that process because they're not willing to accept you're serving an additional notice. Yes, it may speak to a review request that the tenant was on notice. I always check, was anything returned to the board, because tenants will do that as well, you know, return it to the board and they'll say, oh, Mr. Smith, there's a problem. The envelope came back. Now we don't know, so it's likely gonna be a review. And unfortunately, they can use it to delay, and they have 30 days from the date of the order, and they can file a request to extend time if they got a good woe is me story. Woe is me, you know, it's really freaking nice outside. I really didn't feel like going to the dark dungeons of the landlord and tenant board, so I waited too long. You know, all they have to do is check off on a request for review. I wasn't able to reasonably participate. You're all going back to a hearing. And like I said, back to the time delays.
60 days.
It's gonna take a little while to get you back into a hearing. Thankfully, some of the vice chairs who are now, you know, really monitoring the review process, this guy that I have to do on Tuesday, he's at 20K. So, you know, he filed his thing on June 6th, and I have a hearing on June 26th. So 20 days. It's still another couple months rent that he owes, you know, what can I tell you? He's approaching the maximum. The other thing as well is, there's a very strong rumor that's got a lot of movement on my mind. In all likelihood, Ontario is going to finally match Alberta for our monetary jurisdiction in small claims court at 50K. So that's a good thing for everybody. It means I won't have to waive as much of your money when you've made these mistakes and let the arrears grow that high. Once it happens at small claims, it's an automatic transfer to the landlord and tenant board. But that also means the tenant's greed will also naturally increase. And all tenants believe that if they can write a good enough woe is me story, that they too can have a free winning lottery ticket and walk away with your money. And I'm kind of known as a real animal at tearing these things apart. Okay, I'm very, very specific about my cross-examination. I can make men cry. My mother taught me well. She could make men cry. So I learned from a master. But yes, it's all, I've heard it's supposed to happen this summer. We've waited for a long time. The 50K will be helpful to all of us, I think, overall. Give us a little more ability to try and cover. That's the other thing. Never let your debts with the tenants grow to any kind of sizable amount. Because the reality is they have the bankruptcy mechanism that they can play on, and they don't care if they're going to burn you. And you've spent time and money, and there's still unrecoverable money. So be mindful of that, okay? Especially in your screening processes. Like you were saying, you're looking for like the model tenant in your mind. But I'll tell you something. I've evicted tenants who, at the time they moved into the condo downtown, were bank managers in banks, and at the time I evicted them, they were crackheads. So just because they look good in the beginning doesn't mean they stay, the fruit doesn't always stay fresh in the fridge, as it were. So keep that in your minds as well, okay? Like, I'm trying to give you as many different working tools to help you perfect your business so that you suffer less losses. I see millions of dollars of losses annually. And it may not be my money, but it still bothers the crap out of me. And if I have to give tenants money, it bothers me even more. Loathe the notion of giving tenants. I'm not known in this system for having bags of gold with tenants' names on it. I in fact even tell them that. No tenant, I in fact not here with a bag of gold with your name on it today. I am here now, we're gonna give you a hell of a hearing that you're never gonna forget, probably need therapy afterwards. See how you like that. So, anybody else have any questions? You have
You had mentioned since 2011, we're required to tell the tenants about section.
2007.
Yeah, sorry.
Section 11 is the section.
Now, other than utilities, I'm just curious, what have you seen in the way of repercussions that landlords have to face?
We
if they
see
haven't-
tenant claims saying that, woe is me, the landlord tried to keep me from knowing my rights, which is one of the reasons why there's duty counsel at every one of these hearing locations, and you want them to go to duty counsel. You don't want them having that argument. That's an appealable point. So I, in fact, am actually one of the few agents that in my daytimer, I have all the numbers for all the duty counsel clinics province-wide. Great, Betty, where's your address? There you go, there's the number, knock yourself out. Go get some free legal advice. Because you're not coming back and you're not defecting my cases by saying I prevented you from knowing your right.
So it's probably not something that's the primary reason they've taken you, the landlord. It's just some additional facts that they're gonna try and use to.
They're gonna try and claim that you, yes, we're seeing, the most we're seeing it right now is on this topic of utilities. We're seeing claim after claim surfacing like crazy. And, you know, it really does depend on the adjudicator how that's gonna go for you and the skill set of your representative. And also the skill set and the evidence the tenant may have. You know, they built these cases thinking about fighting with you, but they don't take 10 seconds to think about, wait a minute, my landlord's gonna go to a guy like Mr. Smith who's renowned for chewing his way through tenant evidence at a frightening rate of speed for everybody. If they took that 10-second thought, they might be able to better cases, but even still, I'm still gonna tear it apart like the way I do every day. Somebody else had a question? You got it?
So in terms of a tenant who might have a reversal of fortune, what does the landlord have in terms of like regular visitations or?
I encourage you to all do a minimum of 2 to 4 inspections a year on your rental unit and document it and make your insurance company aware that you're being a good landlord protecting their money.
Which brings me to another thing with contents insurance and you know, how to you know, in the case of something happening in the building that to have a tenant who has their own contents insurance.
I'd make it a condition of your lease.
Right, and that's enforceable in some way?
Okay,
You want
yeah,
proof
problem.
of it, but
It is enforceable because I have a divisional court case that says if it's a condition of the lease agreement the tenant didn't, then the tenant's substantially interfering with your rights. So I can end the tenancy for that reason.
and so that's something you put in Schedule 8, for example.
And yes, absolutely. That is a mandatory condition of this tenancy that not only that you have, but that you maintain at all material times insurance sufficient to cover your contents and potentially third-party liability as well. So that way, tenants insurance is not that expensive. Realistically, it's nothing. It's like I think it's less than $200 a year or something like that. It's like 125 bucks. Who cares? It's nothing. Another good point in that, which brings me down the value of that. The Act obligates you to give an address for the purpose of serving documents and notices to. It's called Section 12. And if you don't, your right to collect rent is immediately suspended and your tenant's obligation to pay you rent is immediately suspended. This is a common mistake realtors make, and it's curable. It's not a permanent thing. But here's the reality. I always tell people that a serving of tenants with your Sunday dinner is truly a crappy side dish, and I'm not kidding. Doesn't say I have to give my home address. It doesn't say I have to give my place of employment address. It says an address. And an post office address is an address where you have your privacy intact It costs a lousy $160 a year, who cares.com. Your privacy's in control. Tenant, got something to say? Say it in writing, send it there. If I think it's relevant or reasonable, I'll respond in a timely manner. But you will not be coming messing with my Sunday dinner. I really hate tenants for Sunday dinner, truly. I hate clients to call me on during Sunday dinner about tenants, because that's annoying too. So get a post office address, make it the address for the landlord. Here you go, tenant. I've complied with the requirement of the act. And I have case decisions that are mine that say that too. I've already perfected that a long time ago.
Another question. In terms of taking first month's rent and the last month's rent at the beginning of a tenancy, I know some people recommend trying to ask for a certified check or you know, to guarantee that you have the funds for both of those before the actual person moves into your.
Gotta be slightly careful with how you handle that. You know, to some degree, the first month's check should be dated for the start of the tenancy, and I would say yes, it should be in certified funds. And the rent deposit, the last month's rent deposit, yes, I would absolutely say it should be in certified funds. I took down a predator tenant that was in the Toronto Star. It was a joint effort. When we started with her, she had 5 units in her possession. I took 2 away, and I have 2 other colleagues each take 1 away from her, and including the one that was in the Toronto Star, the Cheryl Serini. This tenant's approach was to work almost exclusively with rental agents because, well, they're lazy. No offense meant. I'm in your house and I'm not trying to offend. But they're habitually lazy people, and these predators know that. And they're not going to do due diligence, and they're just going to be sloppy, and they're going to buy the stories because they're just not thinking. And they don't have any skin in the game, so what do they care? That's what they think. And her game was to con rental agents who'd be letting her into the tenancy. Oh, here's my checks. Give me the keys. Hallelujah. Screw you now, the tenant. You got nothing because those are about as rubber as a tennis ball. Now I'm in, and now I'm going to start Airbnb-ing your unit today. And she did. And she was a real predator. And I had to work very hard. We finally got her criminally charged, by the way, on the last case with Cheryl. She did suffer fraud charges because writing bad checks is kiting, and it's a crime, it's fraud. And there was other false documents that she had generated, employment documents that were fraudulent documents and stuff. And you can go to jail for creating a false document. So it was a lot of work for all of us, and I had to stay on her like a Doberman. And there's over 20 Airbnb sites out there. And unfortunately, the first landlord that happened before it came to me tipped her off to what kind of evidence we might need, because she was a lawyer who doesn't practice this area of law. And I guess believes the It's a Wonderful Life dream that we're not living in. And so she became very difficult to track her ads, because she'd put them up, take them down, put them up, take them down. And you had to basically make it your life to find them, because I need to have a screenshot. I need to capture that she's charging more than the lawful rent, because that is actually a crime in Ontario, and I have a tenant who's going to a hearing very soon for that. If they charge $1 more than the lawful rent, it's an illegal act. They'll happily take their unit away from them. They don't need the evidence. Evidence equals outcome in every hearing you go to, period. The better your evidence, the better chances of success. The more details you can give me, dates, times, specific, the better the bullet I can build for you. Because that's what the case law says. It's got to have this kind of powder in it to make it work. Yes, sir.
What about photographing a tenant? I have a tenant who's smoking. And
Smoke.
I'd like to get a picture of it smoking, but I can't.
Yeah, evidence equals outcome, and if it's in your lease agreement that's prohibited, then it's substantially interferes, but it has to be done on a remedial notice. Tenant, stop doing this within 7 days, and if you do, well, okay, we'll let you off the hook for now, but if you do it again in the next 6 months, we'll send you to a hearing anyways.
So when can I take a photograph? Anytime?
Anytime. If there's smoke in your unit, you can tell. I just had one go through a smell test because she's uber sensitive to that sort of thing. Non-smokers usually are. I used to say my dad could, smell cat pee before the cat peed it, and that applied to the cigarette smell on my shirt. But so my client, she's uber sensitive. She made a mistake. She put a tenant in her own home. Says in the lease agreement, no smoking. Kids smoking pot in there like there's no tomorrow, like he's at hippie fest back in the 60s. and it's making her crazy. So I set it all up, gave them the notice, gave them the 7-day remedy period, with a notice to enter on the 7th day, go do a smell test. She says it smells like crazy. He's going over here, I'll get him and the mother, I don't care. And I never care about tenants.
How do you make an evidence of smoking? What kind of evidence do you provide for smoking?
Well, you know, whatever evidence you can. He's talking about taking a picture. And sometimes you can get a picture of ashtrays and stuff like that. That's going to be evidence.
If that doesn't work,
Your own sense of smell.
you can use that, you can tell the judge that I smell.
And the member's going to look at, they're going to take, on a balance of probabilities, who do I believe more? You, that says, as a landlord living on the upstairs, you have a doctor's note to say, I'm suffering terribly from secondhand smoke, I'm hyper allergic to it, and it's interfering in my life. They're going to believe that over the tenant that says, oh, well, I never smoke, I always smoke outside.
What if you don't live on the property?
Then if you don't live on it, again, you're going to need other evidence. I just did a case for somebody in East York. The landlords don't live there, they live in another neighborhood not that far away. But I had 2 complaining tenants. One with children, one not. But both renting to the landlord prolifically. The guy is smoking in here every day. It's like a hot box. My clothes reek. I can't take it anymore. Landlord, do something about it or else. And I made them be willing to come to a hearing. Now, the tenant tried to file a peremptory tenant application, which I beat to death before my eviction hearing, and then he caved in, realizing, okay, I'm going to get evicted, so I might as well just agree to it. So we did. Sometimes it has to go that way.
If the other tenants in that case do not want to come to
They're
a
not
hearing,
willing to come
can
to a
they do
hearing,
sworn
then
statement?
too bad, so sad, yeah. Well, see, a handwritten statement is meaningless. This is how evidence works out. The best evidence is always a live body we can all ask a battery of questions to because we can test the veracity of your answers. Not so good is an affidavit. It's not subject to cross-examination. It's simply a sworn statement that somebody could be criminally prosecuted if it's found to be false. The least considered are handwritten notes. The only exception to that rule is contractors. If a contractor on their own letterhead or on their invoice says, you went to the unit to fix item A, couldn't breathe in the unit because his tenant was smoking so much bloody dope in there I thought I was going to pass out, or it smelled like I was in a chimney hot box, or there's garbage all over the place, or whatever the issue, and they put it on their company letterhead or their invoice, now I have evidence. Because that's now a professional name supporting a specific statement without the need and expense of bringing that guy to a hearing. They got his statement right here. It's on his bill.
I never thought about that.
Evidence equals outcome. I like to win.
Now we're talking about like what happens if our tenants are bad, right? So before bringing a tenant into it, is there any way that you suggest we can prevent having these bad tenants?
Yeah, you got to do your due diligence. The number of times I've shown up at hearings and, where the information the tenant's given on the rental application, which is often why I'll ask you to send me that, is their own information for their prior landlords. You can go at any time to City Hall for free, type in go into the room by the mayor's license place, there's a room with a bunch of computer bays, type in the address the tenant claims is their last address, and now you're looking at who owns that property, and you're going to be able to contact them and say, hey, was this person your tenant? And geez, that's really strange because this phone number that I've just gotten doesn't match the phone number the tenant gave me because that was their lying little heathen friend or themselves, which often is the case. Same thing with employment. Do this due diligence. Believe nothing. I get up every day, I know one thing in my life to be true. You're all lying. After that, we'll see what you can prove, if anything. And it still won't believe you.
If you can prove the application has
criminally on an application if they falsify.
Yes,
information.
but here's the reality. Our legal systems are severely overtaxed.
Yeah.
And the prosecutors won't do it for petty theft.
Right.
So it's got to be significant. There has to be repeated examples of the crime, multiple fraudulently created documents that led to your hardship so that they can justify the cost to prosecute that person. But I would suggest that it could possibly be common ground for substantial interference, but how does the tenant then remedy that? Is it an illegal act that a board might be willing to terminate on? Depends on the board member. I profile every board member for a reason. I need to know how they think, their command of the law, how they apply it, are they a tenant hugger, or are they balanced? I ask that question as soon as I sign in. Who's the adjudicator? Great. My targeting sites are coming on, and then I'm going to shoot you in the hallway today, rather than go to a hearing. Used to be specifically true in Hamilton when Frida Champagne-Tutu was running terror down there. I used to tell people, if you went there and Fred the guard says it's Frida, I said, you gotta go tilt your head and look through the crack in the door. If her hair's up, don't go to the room, everybody's gonna die. If the hair's down, 50% are gonna live, 50% gonna die. We still don't know who's who yet. Do your business in the hallway. You got a question, ma'am?
Yes, what about the utilities after the tenancy ends and you find out there are some utilities that need.
Small claims court.
That's it?
That's it.
So you find out there's what?
As soon as the tenant walks away from your unit and they're not in possession, you are obligated, you have no rights at the board.
Right.
The tenant, however, can come back for up to a year and say, what a bad evil landlord you were.
It is.
And Mr. Smith's an asshole, they always throw that one in there just because maybe I am, I don't know.
So what about deposit? The tenant board doesn't like us to take deposit, right? A key deposit or.
You can't. A key deposit has to be refundable.
Has to be refundable, but you can hold it for a certain number of days before you refund it.
When they give the keys back,
That's it?
that's it, as long as you give them back with their deposit, then they give the keys back. But going beyond that, the whole reason damage deposits are prohibited in Ontario, and I actually agree with it, is quite specific. The courts took the position that that's you acting as a judicial body and making a ruling on damage. How do we know as the court that that's not just simple wear and tear? How do we know your damage isn't grossly exaggerated? So the court said, no, you want damages. And again, back to that judge in the kitchen that loves himself, Winnie, he hates landlord-tenant cases to start with, but he can be absolutely brutal, and he has caused a lot of confusion in the small claims court system on this very topic of what is wear and tear and what is damage. So the best advice to you is, at the beginning of every tenancy, photo illustrate the crap out of your unit. Every square inch, so that I can say, this is what it looked like before we let the animal in, and now this is what it looked like after we let the animal in, and everybody go and have nightmares for a few days afterwards.
Again, it all has to be paid out of the small claims court.
If the tenant's no longer in possession. If the tenant's still in possession, even if they said, I'm leaving. Okay, I never believe that one either, unless the sheriff's coming. But even if they say, I'm leaving, if I can still get an application into the board before they did, go ahead and take it to the board. Just needs to be in possession, because that's a question they ask you multiple times. Isn't that still in possession? No, I just like coming here because I like to hang out here. What do you think? Of course they still in possession. You first, and I'll come back over here.
So this is Toronto, so what do you do with applications from immigrants, maybe they're from China, and they don't have any references,
So this is
credit?
excellent question.
Yeah.
So the act says, landlord, all you take is first and last. Several years ago, a case did go to divisional court on that very topic. It has to be structured very, very specifically. You can't ask for it. If they come cup in hand and say, look, I know I'm a nobody, I have no credit here. You know what money daddy gave me? They gave me $100,000 to come here and build a new life for myself. So I'm going to give you a year's rent up front. I want it in writing, then it's coming from them. I want the proof so that I can protect you at a hearing after the fact, and I can pull the case out of them, beat them with a stick. That's what I need. And that divisional court case says you're obligated to pay the interest rate on a month-to-month declining basis. So it's got to be calculated every month what the interest on that amount is, because it's going down as you're using it for each consecutive month. But you have to be careful about it. I've had a few landlords actually get, the board wouldn't accept that argument, even though the tenant wasn't disputing, they offered it.
Was your question on the deposit amount, or was it on whether you
I'm a loser and I have no credit rating, and I want to give you my 1 year up front. How to do it, that's what he wants.
But if they have no credit or proof that they can sustain or whatever,
Like
can you
he's
just
hitting the
turn
nail
them
on the
away?
head of the exact kind of people that no, you can't, because then you're going to be going alone to the human rights tribunal, because I'm not going with you, or I give you a referral. You can't, that would be deemed discrimination. Because a race, or creed, they're an immigrant, because you're
No,
discriminating.
it's not that they're an immigrant, but you cannot prove
And
they
you're
have the
discriminating because
ability.
of financial, in
Right.
order,
They don't have an income or.
in order to be able to use the financial ground to disqualify a tenant, you better have a credit report that says they're a bad credit risk. Not that they have no credit, that they're a bad credit risk, that they have unpaid judgments from before, they have credit cards that they defaulted on. Evidence. That's the only thing that's gonna stop that bullet at the Human Rights Tribunal. The only thing. So that's why I'm saying, if you structure it right, you're right, I agree with you. Back to his story, you wanna find your perfect tenant, but does it fit the model? We don't live in that perfect, It's a Wonderful Life dream anymore, but it never was, but, so you gotta work within the system. You know, I have some clients that when we have all these Syrians looking to flee their country, they're in a screw position. Government of Canada, loving to give away your money. Oh, we'll give you all kinds of money to help, to encourage you to take them in as tenants. They got nothing. You know, a bunch of you took them on. Well, not really my idea, but I understand why you did it, because you're getting guaranteed funds from the government.
Are we, sorry.
Go ahead.
Are we allowed to use the references to try and establish character? I mean, it's somewhat subjective.
It is subjective. That's why I'm saying you gotta scrutinize the crap out of it. Believe nothing. Double check the references information. Geez, how long did they live with you for? See how well they lie, because you know what, the average idiot that's gonna lie can barely remember the lies they're supposed to tell for themselves, let alone their idiot friend.
I guess you said that.
It's a simple equation, it's facts of life, right? Because once you lie, there's so many of them that have to happen, and how do you keep track of them all? After a while, this shit, I don't remember what I told you, maybe I told you that.
I think your best advice was just, I'm sorry, we're going with someone else, not, I'm sorry, I can't prove that you immigrated to Canada, blah, 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 and
No.
you're roasted.
See, that's actually part of the statement that I made, that this is the poking the bear in the rental application, is gonna tell them if we find that you lied, then there will be consequences.
Just two short questions.
Sure, and then I'll come back to you.
Are you allowed to take additional cash deposits?
Nope.
And then the second question is,
If you live in BC, you could.
in BC only?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to request 12 months of post-dated checks to
Nope.
avoid late payment?
Nope.
Allowed?
Nope. Specifically for you.
If the tenant
The tenant offers, again, back to the whole thing in writing, I like an evidence equals outcome kind of guy. The more evidence you give me, the happier I am, the happier you are at the end of the day.
It has to be their idea.
Has to be their idea. It was not your condition. Not your condition. Make them put it in writing to you. Landlord, listen, for the sake of convenience. In all honesty, you know, a lot of people, I was curing a lot of problems. I had this woman call me up one time. She says, Mr. Smith, every month I have to drive down 3-4 times a month to get my goddamn rent. You drive down from where? From Aurora. Really? Pardon me. Like, are you on drugs? What's wrong with you? Either go and set up a rent collection account near the rental unit, or go and set up e-transfer so the tenant can e-transfer to you.
Who did they skip that?
Well, then you now, it's then the only reason you drive down is one.
Serve
Give them a
notice.
notice. You're calling Mr. Smith. Tenant did it again. Send him a notice. Then now he's done it 5 times. Send him an N8 persistent link, and I really want them gone because this is annoying.
So if, you said if they offer it to us and they give it to writing, what kind of wordings are we looking at?
Landlord, I want to make my life, landlord, I'm a lazy sloth and I want to make my life easier. I want you to please take my 12 post-dated checks in advance. I know you didn't ask me for it, but I want you, because I don't want you bothering me.
So.
Does that
It's
work?
a letter that comes from the tenant to us, it's not part of the agreement.
No. Gotta be careful what you put in your agreement. Because, you know, I see real estate agents cause harm all the time. I promise that this time when I come back in after that question.
So just landlord and tenancy law 101 to read up on any resources or sources you recommend for people who are new to trying to understand all these things?
You can access the entire legislation online. And the forms are all there as well. The only thing, I believe that any landlord should be able to do an N4 on your own. You don't need my help for that. When it comes to an N8, I believe some simple direction and you can perfect that, and then I go to your hearing for you. When it comes to something like an N5, N6, N7, N12, or N13, seek help. it gets more complex, especially at 5 through 7. There's case law you're never gonna know about. There's case law that I've digested a million times over, that I actually, in particular, Ball versus Metro Capital, I was telling the board member for more than a year before Ball became law, you're making an error of law. Because how am I supposed to know the light case I'm supposed to meet if there's no facts or details? And the divisional court told them that. So these are complex notices. They require precision crafting. They require, I build mine like bullets. Fact-based, that they have no way of escaping, that I'm gonna have evidence to support. And I build my interference notices in a way that I almost know you can't void it. So case in point, I have a tenant with a substantial anger issue. I write about all the times you've attacked the contractors and everybody else. And I say, don't attack anybody like that again, knowing full well that you're an asshole of epic proportion and you can't resist the urge to fight with people because that is your nature. And then you self-perfect for me. Or things like paying your utilities. I know you don't have the money, so you're not going to pay off the utilities and void the notice, and I'm going to send you over here and evict you. Things like that. There's tricks that I've learned 20 years in, daily. I live there. You know, people always say, do you have a cot here or something? I pretty much should have a cot. I should have a suite. But, you know, I've lived this law for 20 years. I like to live yours and their lives once. I like to come and shoot something in the head, and then I like to move on to the next one, because the reality is there's too many that need help. That's why I rarely get a holiday. This year I'm taking a holiday regardless. I haven't had one in 4 years. I'm taking one. But seek help after the MA, because it's really complex. That's not something over here.
Yeah, I don't understand the logic. Is what's to prevent us from coming up with the idea of getting the post-dated checks and then getting them to write that it was their idea?
Do it before.
Well,
or do e-transfers. I like e-transfers even better, because we're trackable now. Now we're going to have email evidence of the exact day they sent it to you. Exactly. You don't get your email on the first, you send them an N4 on the second.
Like the full sum in advance?
I'm a big tenant. You agree to pay my rent in full and on time every time. Otherwise, we're seeking the help of people like Mr. Smith.
Well, then we have to pay interest back to them if they pay in advance.
No. Only if they pay you that bulk sum the whole year, yes. Yeah. As the sum goes down, yes, that's what the divisional court case is. But if they're sending you just the monthly rent, no.
You cash it on the first thing.
Right. And that's actually doing e-transfers is better for you, because right now you're putting your check in your account. And this is an actual life story that I'm about to tell you. So your bank's going to go, bank, this is where he banks. This is my location. This is where his accounts are. That tenant goes and gets a judgment against you. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to go garnish your account. You know what kind of mayhem that's going to cause in your life? Because that's likely where your mortgage is too. So do you want them having that information? Same reason they don't want you having their information. That's why they like e-transfers better than everybody. You see what I mean? But you don't want it. Because I actually had a client, she had 6 mortgages, all in the same institution. Monkey on the chain got garnishment on there, froze all their accounts. I had to bring a motion that we appealed and send it through, and it still takes time to free your accounts and free the hostage and get the money back out of the court system. All takes time. Why give them the access? I don't want them knowing. I don't want them knowing my address either. Yes, sir.
Was there someone else?
Oh, that's okay. I'll come back over to him.
Just a quick question.
Hang on one second.
Yeah, very quick question. Is there a statute of limitations, so to speak, for bad behavior? Like, does it get so far back?
Well, the whole legislation's remedial. You know, landlord, you didn't do the repair, problem goes away. Tenant, didn't pay your rent, problem goes away. It's a remedial legislation. So to some degree, yes. But if we get back the right to build these databases again, well, then we'll be able to keep track of their history like we did in the old days when I first started 20 years ago.
No, if a tenant, the pattern started, say, 6 years ago, broke and resumed, is the stuff from 6 years ago still?
You got to be careful on that topic. That's a good question, because let's apply it to the persistent late issue. I never put more than 12 months on a persistent late notice, Because if you do, then the response you're gonna get from the board is, landlord, you were complacent. You were sleeping at the helm. Didn't bother you before, so clearly it doesn't bother you so much that I'm gonna terminate tenancy. And don't forget, it's our mandate here to hug tenants and save as many of them as we possibly can, so I'm not gonna give it to you today. Instead, I'm gonna give the tenant a conditional order, and they're gonna let them off the hook. Why help them? Same thing with the smoking issue or other issues. In fact, a water issue where the lease agreement clearly said, tenant, you're obligated to pay for the water charges. Landlord fell asleep at the helm. 14 months later, wakes up and says, holy crap, there's like, the size of a water bill here. Tenant, you have to pay your water bill. Tenant says, screw you, I'm not doing it. I haven't done it for the last 14 months. Why would I do that? Send it to the board. Board says, nope, you were complacent. I agree, find that the tenant's not, even though the lease agreement said you're obligated. Landlord didn't enforce his rights in a timely manner, and therefore I'm gonna find it didn't matter to you before. Suck it up. And I've looked at that order for a colleague because he asked me if I thought it was reviewable, and I find that it's not because the landlord made that mistake. Bunch of mistakes. That was one of the many mistakes they made. But there were others that were even bigger that led to that finding of fact. You can't make mistakes like that. That's why I'm encouraging you to be so careful. No, I thought I could be here first.
I didn't realize we could take a deposit for keys. Is it just like
It has to be a refundable deposit.
Right, but is like $100 or $200?
A lot of these fobs will tell you to dictate the cost that you have. When you have these condos.
So a locksmith charges $100 to come and change the lock. That's
no, you're still obligated to mitigate under Section 16. So you can, most laws, sure, your first time when you buy a lock, it costs you $100. But when you go to evict a tenant, if you bring a buddy and buddy stays to keep the unit secure, and you pop that deadbolt out, take the deadbolt tumbler to a locksmith for $25, they'll tumble it, hand you 2 new sets of keys, and on you go. You don't have to spend another $100. Cheap. I know. I live with somebody that taught me that lesson.
What do you have to say about the no pet clause?
Yep.
The law says it doesn't stand, but if you do not want a pet.
I know.
Right.
Don't be a landlord.
Can't be.
That's it.
No pet clauses are voided twice. The first one that says anything on lease agreement is contrary to law, automatically void. The other one is the section that says specifically no pet clauses are void. The only way you can get around that is if you can prove that it's causing significant impact, like you are allergic, or it's causing willful disturbance or damage. I evicted a tenant who had 20 cats. My evidence was more than graphic. I had a city councilor come and testify. I had the bylaw officer testify that he did not void their order. And I evicted them for 20 cats, but it was graphic.
Evidence to show that it causes
And
some harm.
has evidence, especially if it's like physical. And your doctor's, and let's face it, tenants do this to us all the time. They go and pay their doctor $15 or whatever the cost is. Doctor, I feel like I need vacation therapy because my landlord's stressing me out. And they show up with this kind of evidence. Do the same. Doctor, my tenant's stressing me out and I'm having heart palpitations and I can't breathe them out. Oh, I need a note that's I picked this monkey. This lady first. I look at that. I'll come right to you.
My question is about mitigating the issue with roommates and switch over of roommates that can happen when you have certain people on the lease,
right.
And then they try and replace.
Don't get involved in that.
Right. So
don't get involved in that. Keep your relationship as it was.
Yeah.
The law says that you can only bring a notice against the person that's in occupation. The person that they bring in after the fact, we call them occupants, and they have no rights, and let's not give them any. We don't care.com.
And the original person on the lease who moved out, at that point.
We can't go after them. So it's just the one that's remaining, and he has all the responsibility. In fact, I just did that to a tenant that the board seemed to hug a lot. We got another conditional order on him. Their last hearing they did with me in January, I think it was. Oh, don't evict this because then the dog will have nowhere to go. Okay, so she moved out and he stayed and he brought in a little buddy and now they breached and I pulled the trigger. And so I'm doing them both.
So what would happen in the worst case scenario where let's say they ultimately replaced everybody?
Well, then we'll bring an application for unauthorized occupancy, and we want to have proof of that. and you're gonna need to know who they are, because the board's practice nowadays on unauthorized occupants is, Mr. Smith, did you let the unauthorized occupant know we were having a hearing? We want you to.
Is
So,
there a number for that application?
there's an application to terminate for that reason, and again, I want evidence.
Sorry, I'm just going to interject really quickly. We're at time right now, and I said we were going to keep it till 9 p.m. So the question I have is, do you want to continue? Anyone who needs to go right now, feel free. Do you want to continue with this type of Q&A? Is that
Yeah.
yeah?
Quick question.
Okay.
Okay, the first of the L and the green, I'll come back to you.
I just want to follow up about pets. So, landlord cannot prohibit pets, but can't he make it like super hard? For example, like I have rat poison everywhere in the house, and like if sofa is destroyed, like damaged, then.
Unfortunately, you should never be renting out a furnished unit at all.
Sorry.
Don't rent out furnished units. Tenants are the equivalent of animals. I don't know what part of that in my discussion tonight you've missed, but the tenants are the equivalent of animals. Never, ever give the animals couches and things to sit on.
Yeah, but the question.
Make the animal go find its own bed to lay in. Because the reality is they will never treat it like your own.
But still, the question is, can we put additional terms regarding pets? Additional rules?
I've run the risk. The condition that the Ministry of Housing put on the standardized lease form is you can attach a Schedule A that can say anything it wants as long as it's not contrary to the Residential Tenancies Act.
It does not, because you don't prohibit pets. You make it hard to have pets.
Good luck with that. And then when I'm at a hearing and that fails, I promise to show my next.
What's your opinion of mediation as opposed to going in front of the
Right now, we're kind of hurting on that area at the board as well, and there's not very many good ones. You know, when a tenant's facing my notice, I'm not the one who needs mediation. I'm there with a bullet and a gun ready to blow your head off. I don't need to be mediated. You, on the other hand, tenant, usually will go to duty council and they'll say, well, you have a problem, tenant. You're here on a Mr. Smith invite, and he's mean and he's heartless and he's soulless. He doesn't care about you and he's here to evict you. Let's go see if he's amicable today. And then usually the only response they get from me is, it's not a question of if he's going. The only question in your mind should be when. And sooner is always closer to the answer that I'm looking for than yours. So that's what I believe about the mediation. You've got to be very careful with how you act. There's a lot of bad mediators right now on the board, and they're frightening. Yes, ma'am.
If the tenant is sabotaging the showings, like they give 2 months.
They do that. They're monkeys. And five of them. And five of them. And five. With the right kind of thing. I did a case one time where I had over 50 reports from real estate agents about how many times the tenant defected the real estate showing, including doing immediate needs to clean tropical aquariums in the middle of the showing, even though he had a week notice.
What does that if I get me? I have no idea how it looks.
If they do it again, we send them to a hearing and I evict them. It's substantial interference. You're trying to sell your house. He's interfering with you. Market's changing. I might lose money.
The future tenant, I'm not trying to sell, but because of what they're doing, I tend to lose a 1 month's rent.
Right?
So
that is an unfortunate problem. That's why I really need you to be really careful about the type of monkey you put in the cage in the first place. Okay? Because otherwise I'm going to have to tell you, you know what? There's nothing we can do. You let an asshole in. They're going to be an asshole till the day they're out, and then some.
okay.
So no, don't let them contaminate new tenants with their viral diseases.
Right.
Keep them
Take the break and
apart.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So obviously you do a lot of reactive work, helping people in a situation where they haven't seen it coming. Do you ever review a portfolio, some leases, some situations, and give some advice on, you know, you should go this way, go that way, change this lease, or the next lease should, like?
Well, like I said, I run an educational style firm, but am I sitting in my office waiting for your call? No. I'm in hearings 5 days a week. Think about my time.
Right.
Pete, you want to retain me for something? Retain me for something.
Right.
But I'm not just sitting at a desk to wait to answer calls. Too many people call
But
upon me every
obviously,
day.
I'm willing to pay to
No,
get
I
some
know that.
great advice. Is that
Yes,
possible?
but I can't fix a problem you've already created unless
Problems
it's.
usually start small and go big when they're neglected. You have
We
the
can-
vision to see.
I can see
You gotta
that
fix
we're
that
heading
now.
that way, and I can see, I had one not that long ago in Durham, where in my mind, the tenant was clearly setting the landlord up, and was able to give him some simple direction. He needed to back off, stop the text messages, we need to get your control back.
Right, okay.
And we can start doing that, because that's really the common element, is that when you come to me, you've lost control, usually at the beginning. Now I got to play surgeon and surgically remove it from the tenant and sew it back to your hand and pray to God it stays there. And that's not always easy. Because tenants, like, you know, some tenants will fight like rabid animals to keep the control of their. Linda Park, another big predator tenant, in possession of 12 units, hoteling like crazy, making over $30,000 a month off of you guys. She fought like a rabid dog, even to the point of self-medicating to avoid me evicting her. So really, like, it's imperative, screening, proper control elements in the plant, doing your inspection 2 to 4 times a year, what's going on here? Are you all the same people I rented to originally? Know everything.
So we're gonna do Q&A for another 5 minutes, and then we're gonna have a few closing remarks. We're gonna wrap up.
Okay.
2 quick questions. The quick one: can you decide how to get paid? So you mentioned e-transfers. Can
Yeah.
you tell them you have to give me an e-transfer?
In fact, actually, even in the new lease, it offers you that.
Okay, perfect. And the second, can you discriminate? So if you're going through a process and you're going to sign a contract with the tenant, and then you find out they have an animal.
Nope.
At that point, you gotta go through with it.
Yeah, I'm not going with the human rights tribunal. That whole raping thing, that really put me off, and I'm not coming back there. Sorry, it's a new itself. There's not this lady looking back to you.
If I, in the course of an inspection, I find a small plant and hoping, maybe it turns out to marijuana, what are my rights as a landlord?
I'm blaming the local government again, because, you know, the reality is we really don't know what this is going to look like in the future. It gave them some rights previously to allow them to grow X number of plants, but I was aware that the prior application required your written consent to it. Whether that's been changed now, because that's just too, you know, contrary to the Human Rights Code for some demented reason I don't know of. You have to do it on a case-by-case scenario, you know. I just evicted a guy at the end of last year. We found 2,000 empty pot plant, like the pots from 2,000 plants in the unit. I told the member he's not coming to the hearing, he's run off, but he left a pound and a half of dope and all the empty pots.
So they have to, the landlord has to renovate the whole place, right?
You have to be careful. If the city of Toronto finds, or any municipality finds out that you have a grow op, they're going to slap a registration on your title, and the permits alone to cure a grow op are $11,000, and you haven't touched anything yet.
How does that work? Like, the landlord gets slapped, the tenant did it, so how does the law protect me in that situation? What would they have in place?
Well, I think we all cured ourselves of that problem. We said goodbye to the Wynne government. I think it started there. We should have done it a lot sooner, but nobody was apparently awake at the helm the last time around, and we let them stay longer.
Yeah.
You know, like, you gotta pay attention to these things.
Okay.
So,
Last question.
Yeah, so, sorry I missed the beginning, I hope I'm not repeating this, but can a tenant sublease the unit?
you can't arbitrarily withhold the right to sublet. What you can do is require them to tender the candidate for screening. And you're better to do a sublet than an assignment, because a sublet, if you've made that end of term mistake before, where you have that lengthy term, at the end of that term, I can tell that sublet your tenancy's terminated, goodbye, and then I have an application to make a file for that. If the tenancy's a month-to-month tenancy, then no. And there's some recent good case decisions on this topic, because they don't have any, they can only sublet towards an end of term. If the end of term is next month, at the end of the month, that's not subletting. And the board's made this decision, so that's good, so I like that.
So do a shorter lease term.
Month to month, from the heart.
From the very beginning.
Right from word go. Fixed terms are a thing of the past. They are an antiquated fossil that
He
will
pounded this
find
into our
industrial
heads for the
someday.
first half hour, so.
Yeah, no, it has
Anyway,
to.
no, but, sorry.
Do you have a clause that you can put in for the marijuana grow up, like you have to have a written consent? If I find that you've been growing without my consent, I can have a fine on you. Is there any clause that you can have?
No fines, no. You can slap them with a notice.
That
People want me all the time to write stupid letters to tenants. I am not wasting my time or my breath or my intelligence writing a letter to a tenant.
Sorry, we're gonna
I
stop.
build a bullet called a notice, and I send it to them saying, I'm going to evict you. Have a nice day, see you in a hearing. Then, that's the sole content of my discussion with you. No flowery letters, no what, the It's a Wonderful Life. Keep that always in your mind. Never existed, never coming. The end.
All right, so we're gonna end the official Q&A. You can go, if you have any follow-up questions, you can approach Stephen directly. We're gonna be here for the next 45 minutes. A couple closing remarks. Is that cool if I just wrap this up?
By all means, sure, and I'll step up for a smoke. You can talk to me outside.
Just not in our unit, right?
We're not in your unit, no.
So anyway, I think the point here is that we hope we never have to call Stephen. Think long and hard about how you want to structure your business so that you can hopefully mitigate the risk of ever having to call Stephen in the first place. Right? So that's a lot of what we talked about. Obviously, if bank manager turned crackhead, there's not much you can do. But we do, you know, in previous meetups, we've talked very, very extensively about our screening protocols. You know, there's a couple of things I just want to add on quickly that, you know, we've talked about an exhaustive list of what we can do. Stephen, I know he has very exhaustive checklists and applications. So right off the bat, Stephen's application package is something that he offers for sale for $50 plus
56, yeah, $56.50.
So you know, email Stephen, get his contact. You can email him directly to get his tenant package. What's very, very important is being able to attach a Schedule A to the standardized lease, and that will offer you substantial protection. So that, you know, if he ever has to take someone to the board, he can then finish the job with his silver bullet. So that's number one. Number two, a couple quick things, very quick tips or things that we've done in the past. Sure. A couple quick tips. Second, I hate giving tenants my phone number. I don't. What I do is I get a VoIP number and I get them to call that. So, and if I ever call them, I call them from that number, right? They don't have my contact, my direct contact, and I can change that VoIP number at any point in time, right? So just a quick tip, if you don't want tenants bothering you on a Sunday evening when you're eating dinner. Screening. So sometimes what we do with screening is we ask for the landlord, we ask for the current landlord, we ask for the landlord, two landlords back as well. Because the current landlord could be just trying to get rid of the tenant. And
happened. You know that right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Go back at least one more.
You have to go back more than one landlord. You ask for their information, and if you're working with us, one thing that we do, similar to what he said go down to the city, check land registry, who's on title, and try to contact that landlord. We actually do that as well. So I know he's not here. I know he's crapping on rental agents, and rightfully so. A lot of rental agents suck, and realtors are the worst for this. The service we offer is hopefully a little more substantial than your average agent, and we do some of this stuff. We have access to land registry, and we check the name of the landlord against the land registry to see whether that's a person on title or not. It's not perfect, but it helps. I had a couple questions for him. He said there's 13,000 paralegals, and only about 20 are good. It's true. There's only a handful of good paralegals who are able to operate at his level. Similarly, here's a quick plug, I suppose, there are 50,000 agents in Toronto, and there's only about 100 agents that can do what we do here at Nation, who operate at the level we do, being investor agents. So similarly, only work with the best. If not us, just work with a good, competent investor realtor. If you're not working with Stephen, work with a colleague who's just as competent as him. Tenant insurance. There's actually what you can do if you're worried about them setting up tenant insurance and then canceling after the fact. You can actually put your name down on their insurance policy to be notified if they cancel that insurance policy. So that way you know, and then they're in breach of contract with you.
How do you do that?
Call their insurance. You get a copy of their premiums.
So call them?
Call them and you can set that up. Okay. Again, these are just quick tips and tricks off the top of my head right now. We have a more exhaustive list as well. Googling, okay, so when we actually are contacting landlords or references or whatever, what we do to try to game the system as well is first of all, we don't call the number, like you said, don't call the number on the application form, Google the company and call that number. Call, ask for the HR department, don't ask for the person's name who's down on the application, ask for someone in HR, and what we often say is, okay, I know you can't tell me this person's salary, but they've written on their application form that they're making approximately this much. Can you at least give me a verification if that's the correct range? 9 times out of 10, they're happy to oblige, because they're not giving you anything specific, okay? The other thing is when you're trying to test and when you're trying to speak to the previous landlord to ask how the tenant was, also falsify some information and then put it out there. Hey, it says here in the application form that they've lived here for the last 10 years. How are they as a tenant? In reality, on their application form, they said they've lived there for 2 years. Or their rent was $1,000, and you're saying, hey, it says here that they're paying $2,500. At least gives you some sort of indication that you think you know who you're talking to. Again, all this stuff is not science. These are just techniques to try to mitigate your risk. So, Steven's gone. Had a couple questions for him, but anyway, couple things. The handout that we see here, we had them at the front. I'm not sure if we ran out. This handout might be of value to you. Go grab one. If we're out, let me know and we'll email it to you. And in the beginning, we talked about pre-construction. Lakeside was the one project that we had displayed as a proof of concept, as a case study. There's that one is kind of on the docket right now. And I think there's a few units that you mentioned might come available.
Yeah.
So anyway, if it's something that's of interest to you, talk to Sam specifically, and he'll be able to kind of walk you through our process. If you're interested in advisory services, we offer a 60-minute complimentary consultation. Our head of advisory, named Lim, he's not here today, but he'll offer you a 60-minute complimentary consultation to see how we might be able to be of service to you. Yeah?
Did you get the impression that if you're saying about a tenant smoking, I guess that's an N5 or N7, that's the kind of
N5.
would you need
N5.
Would you need Steven's assistance?
He's saying N5 through N7 can be tricky. I mean, we've served them directly. Okay, so also put this in perspective. Steven's dealing and working with the worst of the worst, right? The scum of the scum. When we're, that's probably the worst 1% of the cases. 99% of the time, we find that we're able to operate within reasonable parameters, issuing certain notices on our own stuff. That said, he obviously is, his perspective is that I've been dealing with the worst. We've been able to still issue N5s and stuff so we can operate within kind of very basic parameters still.
And then, I could escalate to Steven if...
And we escalate when things go out of control, right? Like, I know what Steven's saying in terms of like the month-to-month. Even me knowing that, I've done kind of a business risk analysis. I also have to weigh that against the tenant leaving in 2 months or 3 months.
That's cool.
Right? No, what I'm saying is like, I'm not holding them to a 1-year lease. And he's talking about tenants that like really know what the hell they're doing and gaming the system, professional predatory tenants. We're hoping not to get those. 99% of the people out there think that they have to sign a 1-year lease, you gotta stick with the 1-year lease. And so that kind of helps our business. If you start thinking about the time and effort around leasing, lease-ups, costs, the effort, just, we've sort of done a business risk profile on that. We still do 1-year leases even against his recommendation because we understand that 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time, it'll still work out in our favor. Of course, he's talking about, oh my God, I've got the wrong person in here, I'm screwed, sort of thing. So, so this is all fantastic information. Use this to try to figure out what works for your business. Yeah.
A lot of people put their information on social media, so check them on Instagram and Facebook.
Do a full
See
profile.
Full Google, but I mean, if you base on what people put there, and they forget.
When we do a screening for our clients, tenant, we do kind of a full rundown. We find social media. No pets. Why does every photo of you have a pet? Right? There's just things like that. You can see if they think that they're your type of profile of person. There's still a lot that you can garner off of social media. So, okay, I'm just gonna wrap this up now because we've already gone over time. But stick around. If you have any questions, we can chat. Steven's gonna be around for the next half hour as well. So, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hey.
What's this about? That's your
It's you probably heard of it. This is basically for people who have less of a sophisticated understanding. So what happens is the point here is just that don't buy because cheap.
Yeah.
Don't buy cheap, buy smart.
Right, of course.
And what a lot of people the trap that a lot of people fall into is they think that buying cheap mitigates risk. When in fact it's actually the other way around. Buying cheap is cheap for a reason. Right. And if you don't know why it's cheap, then you can introduce risk to your business model. And that cheap could oftentimes, 9 times out of 10, just means that you've introduced tenant risk into, because I've invested in many different places, and I understand that finding, with the tenant profile that I want, I can't find anywhere else. I have to pay a premium to get that tenant profile. Location, that's why we're into $1.2, $1.4 million triplexes and fourplexes, because that's how we get our tenant profile, and it's still cash flow business model. Right? And then, we talk to some people and they're like, well, I'm going to go invest in somewhere, but nowhere. And that's going to be like Windsor or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, it's fine. If you have a business model that you think will work there and you're willing to, you at least identify and mitigate that risk. Be conscious about it. Don't, not by default. But that's largely what this is about, because people don't understand why to invest in Toronto. They're like, oh, it's too expensive. Well, it's only part of the story, right? It's expensive for a reason. Understand what those reasons are. So, you take it off?
Yeah, so good to see you.
Yeah, say hi to Cody for me.
I will.
Yeah,
I'll be back at the next one. Yeah, sorry I missed a couple.
No, it's cool. How's your place doing?
Good. Yeah, it's
your condo, your exact condo,
yeah.
we just sold for a client, 20 million, 1 plus 1, 585.
No way. How many square feet?
It's the same unit, or
like
same
corner.
unit. It's corner. I think it's the exact same unit.
What do you know what floor it was?
Sorry?
What floor was it on?
Second floor. Oh, the unit was 204. 20 million, 224. Should be pretty good.
Yeah, I will.
585.
That was 585.
Then you got a price at like
517 or something
yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
So you have more equity in that.
That's good.
This is an awesome time right now to capitalize, to lock in, capitalize on the growth in the condos right now.
Great. But I just refinanced, so I don't have to move it.
Not necessarily. Was it line of credit?
No, it was the
Or mortgage?
Yeah.
So be able to do a home line and increase that number so that you have more borrowing power against the property.
Yeah, there are a few options. If you're interested in trying to figure out your options, your equity and stuff like that, then just flip me a note and we'll have a chat.
Okay.
Because I remember you refied, but if it's a line of credit, you might have options.
I think it's the step.
Yeah, because that's a line. That's a line of credit. So, this is where we kind of talk about your options, because, refi, pull up the equity, divestiture right now might be a good option. Just thinking about, but it's all going to hinge on your what you want to do next as well, because that capital could be put to like some like pretty good use right now. The amount of capital you have in there, you could like even pre-construction right now, you could actually take that and go buy 2 or I think with the amount of equity you have, you might be able
It's
to
like
do 3.
double that.
You might even you might be able to go into 2 or 3 pre-constructions. And the beauty of pre-construction, like I said, you don't qualify for a mortgage right now. You don't take a mortgage right now, so it doesn't hit your credit bureau, which means that you can actually buy several now and then worry about it later.
Right.
But
Like
if
that's
you're-
5
if
years.
you're- Sorry to interrupt, if you're paying those 5% increments out of your line of credit, the credit bureau will see that you've taken more and more balance, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. Like you're not taking out a mortgage to try to close on a pre-construction condo right off the bat.
Right, but you're essentially borrowing money.
Well, this is why a couple of things you can borrow against
Like
property.
I would do the same thing.
Borrow against property,
Always try to borrow as much as
or even divest. Right? So the analysis that we have to do is what's your rent if you take out the line of credit and you're now cash flow negative.
Right.
So that's those are the kind of things that we'll go
Okay.
over.
Yeah, I'll give you a
Right? Because when your mortgage was this much, your $2,000 in rent was enough to cover it.
Yeah,
But
I'm
now
only
that
making
you
like 160 now, I think, a month.
160
Like
positive
160.
cash flow, but your mortgage you haven't fully drawn it out at 80% LTV.
Right.
So we always analyze properties at 80% LTV. They should be properties that cash flow at 80% LTV. You're probably at like 50% LTV or something. I can't remember your numbers exactly. I remember your mortgage was like 200 or something like that, and then you got a line of credit on top of it.
Yeah, it was like 3 something, I think, and now.
I remember you were able to pull like 100 or 100 a bit.
Before
I said I paid for it.
Before you refinanced.
Yeah.
It was actually from it's from.
After it was like.
If I think hard, I think I remember your numbers. You had a mortgage which you were gonna try to access another 1 or 150. I'd have it in my notes somewhere. And the appraisal came in higher than 500. It came in 517. So you actually got even more out of your line.
But I haven't tapped into it.
You haven't tapped into it.
Okay.
But
we only had to pull a certain amount to get for the down payment.
Exactly. But whatever you have left, you could be looking at possibly trying to get a bigger line, or maybe even divesting.
Okay.
So because again, the problem is you're dipping into your line, but that means that your payments are going to be higher as well. And this is the problem I have with resale condos in general, right? Resale condos at 80%, 20% down payment, 80% LTV, it's usually cash flow negative. You refinancing is essentially the same as buying a resale condo. So
okay, I will shoot you a message.
Yeah, sounds good.
Good to see you. So good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.
Good to see you. Say hi, Cody.
I will. Thank you.
You're all in a out of your sheets.
I don't know who that is.
Well, they don't have it anymore. That's great.
Dan, nice to meet you.
Yes, thank you very much. I like the.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance to ask you. Where do you invest?
I have 2 places in Pickering.
Yep.
And 2 in St. Catharines.
Yep.
All of them are duplexes. One is a duplex with an unfinished basement that I might end up digging out the foundation and underpinning and putting.
How much the property's worth? How much is that property worth?
That one was I got it for $377.
What's it worth now?
I don't know. I hadn't got it appraised. That was we just.
The underpin is like
it's like 30,000.
If you're lucky.
Depending on the size of the house, you're getting closer to 70 grand.
It can be 50 to 70. I'm currently I bought a house in Riverdale. My wife and I are doing a renovation on it. We're going to move in, and we are having to underpin. And I'm just saying that but that's a $1.x million property, so it's worth spending the money to underpin it.
Well, even if so the way that I look at it is, let's say it's 70,000, and I can get $1,200 or $1,100. You can't buy anything like 70,000. So let's say 70,000
But you have to
plus
finish
another
it
25
to
to
finish
finish
it.
it, right? So let's say, can you buy a property anywhere at 100 and what's that, 120,000, and then get 1,200 a month? It's impossible. Right? So yeah, it is a lot, but the you know I'm not sure the terms, but
Your
your
payback-
cash spent, yeah.
Your payback period on that is very high. I know the business model. Think about this. At $1,200 in rent, how long will it take you to repay the capital expenditure in order to to capture that back?
Well, with taxes and stuff, I guess it's a tricky
It's a-
question. You've got to do some math. Not difficult math. You just have to work it out. But
It's
there was so when we first bought it. I don't know if you know the Niagara region, but there's a community just outside called Thurl, and they had just passed a rent certificate type program that St. Catharines is considering, and so they're basically just looking for proof that you're meeting certain things, parking, egress, ceiling height and whatnot before they give you a certificate, and then you can be legal, right? So that basement height is, I'll say, not legal. And so I was, before I realized that, I was thinking maybe 30,000 to renovate and finish that, and that would be paid off in 2.5 years at 1,200. So
What about
another 70,000
on top of that?
Yeah.
What about finishing the space, connecting it to the main floor, and then what would your rental bump be there as an alternative to underpin?
I don't think we'll put another 1,200 in that back unit.
But
It
what
was
if-
originally connected, and I started it, put in a wall. Thankfully, there was already a side entrance that allows you to go right down.
Just an option to
Yeah.
explore. We've run into this issue, and even with $1 million properties, we sometimes go that route instead because it can work in certain situations. Just especially if your model is to spend it, and if you're confident on the ARV, then maybe you can refinance and get the capital back. And with the additional rent, that will help you with the additional financing charges.
Yeah.
So maybe that model still works. I know that it makes me nervous to underpin a less expensive property. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Because if I put the same labor in St. Catharines, it's only going to get me 1,200 a month. If I put the same labor in Toronto, I'm going to get 1,800, 1,900.
Or if we could use that capital.
But I don't have, the only property I have in Toronto is the one that I live in. I can't acquire anything. But what I've already acquired, all I need to spend to get 1,200 a month is, we'll say, 110,000.
The model very well might maybe sound, to avoid that one huge expenditure. If you can connect the units, and if that actually makes you can get a bump in rent, because maybe you can fit 2 extra bedrooms down there, and maybe you can get an extra 500, 600 rent, and you only have to spend this much.
So I could avoid
having
the
to underpin.
Okay.
Right?
I think if you have a bedroom down there, whether it's part of the upper unit or not, I think you still have to meet like ceiling height. The windows are fine for egress.
My understanding with the building code and fire code is that when it's separate units, it has to be a certain height basically. But if it's connected, then it doesn't have to.
I thought it was more along the lines of you wake up, fire alarm's going, the place is full of smoke, you can't see anything, and you're running out and you hit your head on something, and then you're dead. Or you're not dead, you're knocked out, and then. But I don't know. I'm finding that municipalities are very
They're different.
Like out there,
yeah.
It's 2 5/8 drywall. In Pickering, it's 1 5/8 drywall. Right? The 1/2 inch is normal, and. Yeah, I like this guy. I want to ask him if there's a way to find out about property management companies to stay away from. Cause I'm sure he's come across, I just don't know if he's made note and made a list of, oh, here comes another ABC Property Management. These guys, they don't know what's going on, that's why their tenants are, you know, they're the prey of these predatory tenants. Is they know they can go to ABC Property Management and they're out to lunch.
So I have properties out in Hamilton. I've gone through several property managers. I'm connected to a lot of many of the well-known ones through Rain and stuff. And I've been through them, and I had to eventually pull out of all of them and groom someone myself to take care of my properties out there. Out that way, I haven't had any luck.
Can I suggest something? Near Lansdowne and Dupont, I think it's Lansdowne, there are two very tall buildings. One run by the family that runs the Diplomatico Cafe, and they interview all their teams.
Did you just put it on Meetup?
And there's another building nearby that's sort of run by some
Yeah, we've run this for a few years.
Conditions.
Yeah. We've grown.
You know, the physical conditions.
We started in January 2017, so it's like 2.5 years now. No, 2016. So 2.5 years. We've grown it to about 650, somewhere. No, we've changed names.
Very nervous about you guys in St. Catharines.
Originally it was like Toronto Annex something. And we've gone through. But, I know, it sounds like you've been to a bunch of these. How does this stuff go?
This is great.
And I don't know very much.
We've tried to we've tried to take a different approach. I haven't been to a lot of these, but one of my partners, he made it his mission to, before we started doing business together, he made his mission to attend every meetup within a 100-kilometer radius of GTA Toronto. And
All right,
basically somebody else.
gotta get home.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll see you guys soon.
See you, Dan. So I got asked.
And say goodbye. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. Hopefully you found this interesting.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, come on out. We're happy to oblige. If you're looking, we can always use feedback. What you like, what you didn't like, and topics.
Yeah.
Like we have a breadth of knowledge, but we don't. This isn't for us. It's for you.
Right.
We're already running that fully. We're happy with what we have. So this is helping you. So what's important to you? What do you want to know? What are your roadblocks?
You like better Moaned or Aqua Vista?
Sorry?
Moaned condo or Aqua Vista condo? One's right in front of the other one. So high up on Moaned so you can see the water, or Aqua Vista is just in front but more expensive?
Ask my partner Sam. All these condos blur together.
Yeah, I know they do.
I work on strategy and business development.
Yeah.
So I'm like each individual one.
You're pushing this one, so that's why it's the same area.
Yeah. So to be perfectly honest, I know very little about this. He screens everything, and everything goes through him.
Yeah.
If it goes through him, then I already know it meets a certain standard. So that's the only reason we mentioned this because our clients.
You got VIP on.
We got VIP on this one, and we got. I mean, in that location, to get less than 1,000 a square foot.
Yeah, well, that's why.
It was like insane. This is across the street from like the George Brown Forest building.
No, these ones that are facing the water, I can get them for like between 8.5 and 900 a foot. On assignment. That's why.
Who's the builder?
Moaned is Great Golf. Okay. And Aqua Vista is Daniels.
Okay. Yeah.
Same as you were talking about the other Daniels project. 1,000 a month.
And Daniels is doing that for a couple of our clients.
That's a long term though. That what's it called in
Regent Park?
Yeah, Regent Park.
Dewey's.
Someone was just shot and killed there last week. Dewey's.
That
to me is like.
It's still a
very
transitioning, right?
Oh yeah.
We clients who are like, okay, well, I don't have what it takes for 1,000 square foot. I can only spend 800 square foot.
And it's good for people who don't have the big down payment.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like only
5%. It works for people in certain situations.
Yeah, and I think that's great.
But like, I don't like compromising. I don't want to buy cheap. I want to buy smart. And so I don't like compromising. I would buy the best possible thing that I'm capable of.
I agree.
Because I know that if I compromise on that, I'm introducing risk into my business.
Yeah.
I don't want to introduce risk.
Yeah. It was,
so anyway, any particular building, you can ask him specifically. So Sam's the other guy there. He's got a blue shirt. Go have a chat with him.
Right.
Okay. You'll probably find that.
Great, great meeting you, man.
Yeah, you too.
And I'll see you next month.
Sounds good.
All right.
Did Stephen leave his email address or any kind of contact thing?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think he said he ran out of cards. I asked him for one too, but we can get it through you, right?
Yeah, I'll
Just send you an email?
Yeah, send it for an email. Or actually, no, better yet, send the email to info. No, send the email to Janny, Janny, at volitionprop.com, which is
Volition Properties?
no, just volitionprop.com.
Prop.com.
If you send it to her, then she'll send you her information. Janny.
At Volition Prop.
She's our office manager and operations manager.
Yeah. No, I could sign it. Sign it. Yeah. So what's a good price to pay for water facing, water view on each?
Do you guys find this useful?
Yes, it was.
I haven't seen you in a long time.
No, because this was very, very interesting. My time was kind of precious.
I think I remember. Did you talk to David Gonzalez?
Sorry?
Did you talk to David Gonzalez? A long time ago? Yeah.
Do you want me to tell you what I think?
Well,
Maybe I'll leave you.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Take
Yeah,
care.
you too.
He's incredible.
How so?
I took the deal to my accountant and he was startled. And he found me a much better deal. I objected to specific things in the deal. But he came back and he came back to me and they were still there. Like the lender wanted to veto my lawyer and he came back with a deal and said that's gone. I looked at it, still in the deal. Originally he said that there would be only fees once. When the deal first came to me, there would be fees every year for approval. And then there was still there the same version. No, he was quite sorry. My accountant said, I can help you out. I got a much better rate of fees just once. And yeah, so I don't know deal with that guy.
Did you? I know that you had a certain situation with back taxes and everything. Did you got it all put up? Good.
I mean, I still have to now deal with paying back the money I borrowed, but I've got everything came out my bank and
good.
I figured that was like destroying my life.
Well, I'm glad that
honestly I will not because I've seen your notes that you have to come and talk to people.
I missed it.
But I would hesitate.
I mean, that's
situation is an exception.
I mean, it's fair enough. I mean, everyone has. He has been able to help a lot of the clients, but I was just curious because I remember. Man, this goes back a few years because, but I remember that you having a conversation. I didn't know where it led. I don't think I've seen you since then.
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
No, because I've got other stuff to do. But this was very there are moving pieces and then specifically the difficulties they're having with one thing. They're not major, but I just want to make sure I don't do something stupid.
The new lease agreement along with this schedule should provide some good protection. But the new standardized lease is so bullshit.
No, I was afraid that the wind government was going to do what in fact said they did do with the rent control.
How are you?
JC, what's going on?
Nothing slow this week.
You've been traveling.
I just got back on Monday night.
Do you even
work?
Yeah, I guess so. Do you even work?
I had a busy spring, so I took a few days off.
Where'd you go?
I went to New York.
I just see pictures. I don't go on. I just when I do see stuff, I'm just like thank you. See James. I just like she's gone again. You
well, I don't
extravagantly.
I'm too busy to work. But when I'm working, I'm not posting, right? So no, I mean, it was a pretty busy spring. I told you Andrew is moving.
Again?
Yes.
So the townhouse?
To a semi in the.
Oh, sorry. So sold the townhouse, moved to a condo.
Right. He sold the semi to a condo, and then yeah, and then now he's moving to a semi in the AHs because he figured that it's not even so much that the space is too small, but he just like goes, what do you mean I can't add another, can't add a deck or add a, do whatever I want. I go, it's a condo, you can't. And I don't think that, I think he thought that with a condo he would
Hey, Mark, dude,
travel more,
sorry, man.
but then he ended up getting a condo, so he can't do it
Yeah.